Warrior Lore. Chapter 40-50. I can't walk anymore. Angus sat down on a big rock and panted. He looked exhausted. If I continue walking, my willpower will definitely collapse. Angus said weakly, now, in my mind, there is only devouring. I want to devour everything I see. Everything. Zichun, who had also consumed a lot of energy, stopped and said faintly, if that's the case, then take a rest. Try to devour the air around you. Air? How do I devour? Is it true that if you don't work hard, you'll only eat air? Angus shook his head slowly and weakly. No, I don't have any strength. No. Before he could finish his words, a flash of saber light had already arrived in front of him and pressed against his neck. The coldness caused Angus to shiver. Looking at Zichun's cold eyes, he didn't know when his body regained its strength. He quickly said, I'm fine. I don't need to rest. Looking at Angus's clear eyes, Zichun put away the bone knife and said, whether you have the strength or not, you still need to rest. Like me, try to refine the air around you. There was spiritual energy in the air, but Zichun didn't know this principle. It seemed that in his memory, there was a similar situation. At this moment, he was just using it as a reference. He sat down cross-legged. The cultivation method that he obtained from an unknown source began to operate on its own. A small cyclone appeared from his body and then gradually extended. The air from the heaven and earth was attracted by this cyclone and entered Zichun's body. The air that entered his body seemed to go through layers of filtration as it circulated around his body. Finally, it became the purest energy. Zichun smiled. Yes, it's really possible. Before the smile on his face could fully spread, Angus shouted, I can actually devour the air. He was very excited and shouted, because being able to devour the air meant that he didn't need to devour other people. Calm your heart. We don't have much time. Zichun's words sounded. Angus stopped shouting and obediently began to devour the air. With the return of his strength, Zichun gradually returned to his peak state. He stood up and felt his own strength, which seemed to have increased. Angus was still recovering, so Zichun did not disturb him. Instead, he took out the piece of golden armor and looked at it. In the past, the scales were black, and only the patterns in the middle were golden. Now, the entire body was golden, and it seemed that even the material itself had changed. Right now, Zichun was certain that by activating its power, he could once again form a breeding ground. However, other than the first time, what other uses did the golden armor plate have? Boss. Angus stood up, looked at Zichun, who was in a daze, and called out. Zichun turned around. You've recovered? Angus said, I've recovered a little, but the thought of devouring hasn't weakened. There's no rush. Take your time. The two of them moved forward aimlessly, sometimes changing directions. 2 days later, Zichun found another person. After a not difficult battle, Zichun killed the other party. According to Angus, there were about 8 people who ran away, and there were about 6 left. The premise was that these 6 people didn't die. In the next few days, the 2 of them didn't find anything. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but Zichun and Angus didn't enter the depths of this place where a large number of phantoms lived. Boss, do you think they'll become ghosts and go deep into the place? Angus, who hadn't found anything for a few days, raised the doubts in his heart. Zichun said, maybe. In the past few days, they didn't even find a human corpse. Once the awakened ones lost their target to devour, they might go to the ghosts. A few more days passed, and Zichun still didn't find anything. But whether it was Zichun or Angus, they were in a good mood because they didn't become ghosts. It seemed that as long as they didn't devour humans, they wouldn't become ghosts. Whether it was Zichun or Angus, they were no longer worried about becoming ghosts. Now, they just needed to find other people and kill them. Then, everything would be over. In the future, whether to go deeper or return to Buffon's team depended on the 2 of them. Boss, we've almost gone everywhere. It seems that those people should have gone deep into the place and joined other ghost forces. Angus said. Zichun nodded. In fact, he also had the same guess in his heart. He looked at Angus. After so many days together, Angus could control his devouring emotions very well. If you can't find them, then don't look for them. What's your plan? Angus thought for a moment and said, if I say I want to go back, will you agree? Obviously, he was referring to looking for Buffon and the others. After all, in that team, there were people that Angus knew and even people that he cared about. In the past, he left because he had no choice. Now that he was able to suppress his devouring thoughts, he wanted to go back. Of course, Zichun had no objections. He believed in Angus' character and his willpower. In fact, at this point, there was no need for willpower to suppress it. Only one's heart. If one was kind and did not bully the weak, there would not be a problem. Boss, you're the best. Seeing that Zichun agreed, Angus was very excited. But then, he asked, Boss, you're going back too, right? Zichun did not answer immediately. Instead, he thought for a moment and finally said, maybe. After that, Zichun walked forward. He planned to look for a few more. What if he could find a few? Angus stood there, a little stunned. Zichun said maybe. Obviously, he was not sure if he would go back or not. If Boss did not go back, where would he go? Deep in the place? There was a huge force there, and there were a lot of ghosts. When Charlemagne was still the leader, no one dared to attack. Zichun, who was walking forward, suddenly stopped because Angus did not follow him. He turned around, a little puzzled. Angus, Zichun called. After Angus called him Boss, Angus told him to just call him Angus. It would be more intimate. No one responded. Zichun's expression changed, and then he began to walk back the way he came. After walking for dozens of feet and stepping on a high ground, Zichun's expression changed. He saw Angus, but at the same time, he also saw a total of 4 ghosts. At this moment, a ghost reached out and pressed on Angus's head, ready to devour him at any time. But they did not. Instead, they stood there, as if waiting for something. Long time no see. Chapter 4051. Looking at the 4 ghosts in front of him, Zichun frowned slightly. According to Angus's estimation, there should be 6 awakened ghosts. Where did the other 2 go? His eyes glanced to the sides without leaving a trace, but he did not see any other ghosts. I'm talking to you. Didn't you hear me? Seeing that Zichun ignored him, the voice of the ghost from before became colder. Zichun looked at the 4 ghosts. There seemed to be only some slight differences, but it was impossible to recognize them. Angus was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, standing there without daring to move. What do you want? Zichun's eyes fell on the ghost who spoke and finally spoke. At this moment, he could tell that even if the other party had become a ghost, he still maintained his sanity. Capturing Angus this time was definitely not a coincidence, but a premeditated capture. Because Angus's perception was very sharp, and his hearing was far better than Zichun's, if it was not someone familiar with him, it would be impossible to capture him. If you don't want him to die now, throw the knife in your hand over, the ghost said indifferently, apparently very afraid of Zichun's sharp bone knife that had seen blood many times. While speaking, in fear that Zichun would not cooperate, he once again exerted force. Angus's face showed a painful expression. Okay, here you go. Zichun took the bone knife and threw it to the other side. In an arc, the bone knife fell on the grass. You dare to play tricks with us? Do you want to die? The ghost coldly snorted, and the light in his eyes became sharper. You go pick it up. One of the ghosts carefully moved forward, while the other 3 stared at Zichun vigilantly, and at the same time firmly controlled Angus. The ghost picked up Zichun's bone knife, walked back, and put the bone knife on Angus's neck. However, it seemed to be very inappropriate. After all, they were walking the path of devouring. He took back the bone knife on Angus's neck. Looking at Zichun without a blade, the ghost said again, and the golden armor plate from last time, hand it over as well, or he will die. This was the true purpose of the phantoms. They wanted to capture Angus and use him to threaten Zichun in order to obtain the golden armor plate. Of course, that was assuming that Zichun was also unarmed. In their opinion, Zichun was too strong with his weapon. Angus began to shake his head, struggling to stop Zichun from agreeing. Zichun's expression became strange. You still want my golden armor? You don't understand human language? Hand it over quickly, Ugue shouted. Zichun shook his head and said, What you're saying is no longer human language. It's ghost language. You want to die? Yugue was enraged, and the other Yugue stared coldly at Zichun. Obviously, Zichun had touched their scars. If they could become human, no one would be willing to become a ghost. Am I wrong? Zichun laughed sarcastically. We're all existences that have the power of devouring. Why have you all become like this, while we're still intact? Don't say that you want to be human. In fact, in your hearts, you're already ghosts. Not only that, but you also feel very at ease. Otherwise, why would you ask for my golden armor plate? Isn't it to establish a new place of captivity? So, am I wrong to say that what you're saying is all ghost language? Cut the crap. Either hand over the armor plate, or he will die here. Yugue threatened loudly, but the anger in his heart was already monstrous. If it weren't for Zichun's combat power, they would have already devoured Angus to vent their anger. Zichun looked at the four Yugue and said, if he dies, do you think you can escape? So, you don't intend to care about whether he lives or dies? Yugue asked. Zichun did not answer directly, but said, if the four of you die together, I believe it will be worth it. The four Yugue's face changed. Obviously, they did not expect Zichun to respond in this way. In their expectations, after Zichun saw that Angus was in their hands, he would definitely obediently agree to all their conditions. Just when they were at a loss, Zichun continued, of course, it would be great if he doesn't die. But the premise is that when I give you the armor plate, you must let Angus go. That's impossible. Yugue refused, and his heart was filled with confidence. Obviously, Zichun still wanted to save Angus. Then there's no other way. Zichun spread his hands and said helplessly, then you can do it? Of course, they did not dare to do it. Once they devoured Angus, death would be waiting for them. Even if they had the absolute advantage, they did not have the confidence to kill Zichun. The Yugue continued, if we let him go, we will die here immediately. We can't agree to this condition. Zichun said, if I say that this time, if you keep your promise, I won't kill you. Would you believe me? Do you believe yourself? Yugue said sarcastically. Zichun said seriously, of course I believe you. As long as you let Angus go, I can give you the armor plate and let you leave safely. Zichun's expression was very serious, but Yugue did not believe him at all. He said, instead of asking us to believe you, why don't you trust us this time? Zichun asked, what do you mean? Yugue said, give us the armor plate and stay where you are. When we reach a safe place, we will let him go. How about that? Zichun looked at Yugue. Can I trust you? Yugue said loudly, of course, we are very trustworthy. In our life, of course, trust is everything. Looking at the other party's righteous words, Zichun said, well, you can go. After saying that, Zichun took out the golden armor plate and threw it into the distance. The armor plate flew straight forward and fell about a few hundred feet away. Angus's eyes widened as he looked at Zichun in disbelief. He couldn't believe that Zichun would believe them so easily. At the same time, Angus's heart was moved. The four Yugue began to pull Angus back, while Zichun stood motionless in place according to the agreement. We can see you. You are not allowed to move. Yugue said loudly. Zichun said, don't worry, I have given you the thing. Now, as long as you let Angus go, you can leave safely. 3 of the Yugue sped up, while the other one stood on a high ground and looked at Zichun. After seeing that Zichun did not move, they were relieved. Picking up the golden piece of armor, Yugue suddenly revealed a cold smile. Idiot, do you think we will abide by the agreement? Angus's heart suddenly sank. Yugue laughed and said, trap Zichun first, then devour him. It was impossible to keep his promise. Yugue would keep his promise? He held the golden armor plate tightly and activated its power, about to trap Zichun in the distance. This time, not only did he want to devour Angus, but he also wanted to trap Zichun in the captivity and kill him in one fell swoop. Finally, he would look for those who had escaped and complete his captivity. The golden light on the armor plate bloomed. Chapter 4057. The golden light on the armor plate surged and was completely activated. Yugue's smug smile was still ringing out. The other three Yugue approached Angus, ready to devour him. But the rumbling sound did not appear. The armor plate that released the golden light did not succeed. Yugue was stunned. The other three also stopped what they were doing. Nonsense really can't be trusted. At this moment, a sigh sounded, and Zichen's figure appeared in their field of vision. Not good, Yugue shouted, and was about to continue to control Angus. At this moment, the golden armor plate in his hand suddenly bloomed with bright light. In this light, a golden blade appeared and directly swept through Yugue's arm. Puff! His arms were directly broken, and he could no longer control Angus. Angus took the opportunity to retreat. Courting death. The other three Yugue reacted and immediately rushed towards Angus. At this moment, they were shocked and angry. Angus was equivalent to their life. If he ran away, everyone would die. A black light appeared in the field of vision of the three Yugue, like a black lightning, instantly approached. A cold light flashed. During this time, accompanied by an angry roar, the black light flew backward. One of the Yugue fell in a pool of blood, and there was a cut on his neck, almost cutting his head off. The other two ghosts had deep wounds on their arms, so deep that their bones could be seen. It was the hope that had been hiding in the dark and silently following them. Of course, Zichun would not believe the nonsense of these Yugue, and had silently made arrangements. Angus retreated far away with lingering fear. The Yugue with the broken arm in front of him began to scream loudly. The golden light turned back and came in front of Zichun. He held it in his hand and turned it into a golden blade. This was the second function of the golden armor plate that Zichen discovered. Change. You don't keep your word. The Yugue who had lost his arms retreated in horror. The other two Yugue also did not hesitate to escape. Since the plan had failed, they could only run for their lives. Zichen's mouth showed a sarcastic smile. Why? Do you think you can die with a peace of mind? Actually, if you keep your promise, I will definitely let you go. At the very least, I will let you go this time. Yugue's eyes flashed, but he didn't know what to feel. Zichen tapped the ground with his feet, and his figure quickly swept forward, raising the golden blade in his hand. A downward slash. A golden light appeared in front of Yugue, filling his field of vision. At this moment, his heart was filled with regret. He regretted that he couldn't control his devouring heart. He regretted that he shouldn't have been so greedy as to scheme against Zichun after obtaining the armor plate. He should have just left. Unfortunately, it was all too late. The golden light disappeared in front of his eyes, and the ghost's life was over. Zichun held the golden blade and stood behind Yugue. He raised his head and looked at the other two escaping existences. He was as smart as last time, running in a different direction. Obviously, he was trying his luck to see which one Zichun would chase first. Unfortunately, their calculations were clearly wrong this time. Zichen glanced at Hope, and Hope did not hesitate to chase after the first target. Zichun went to the second target. A moment later, Hope and Zichun turned back. Angus was still standing in the same place, unable to calm down for a long time. Here. Zichun threw the bone blade he picked up to Angus. Angus caught it instinctively and looked at Zichun in confusion. I'll be using this from now on. Zichun raised the golden blade in his hand and said, Since we've been exposed, there's no need to hide anymore. Thank you. Angus thanked him, but did not put away the bone blade. Zichen stepped forward and patted Angus on the shoulder, saying, Relax, this is actually a good thing for us. Look, we've dealt with 4 of the 6 targets in one go. Now there are only 2 left. Even so, August still felt very guilty in his heart. Because of him, Zichen had almost lost everything he had. I'm your boss. Who else should I save if not you? Zichen turned around and said, Let's go back. Go back? Angus was stunned. Go back where? Go back to where you want to go, of course. Angus quickly caught up with him. Didn't you say you wanted to solve all the problems? There's no need to solve them. Those 2 guys must have gone deeper. If those people could find the 4 of them, they could naturally find the rest. However, only 4 of them came this time. Obviously, they had other plans. At the very least, if it was Zichun, he would have prepared 2 plans. The first plan was to own a place of captivity, and if it failed, Then he would go deeper and cooperate with those ghosts, then contribute the captivity to them. This was also the conclusion Zichun came to after talking with the ghosts and learning that they had not lost their rationality and wisdom. Therefore, he had to go back in advance and tell Ibufan and the others to be careful. At the same time, he had to leave Angus behind. Zichun, who had not decided where he would go in the future, had made plans for the future after this incident. Zichun and Angus stood outside the human residence. As far as the eye could see, there were many buildings. Without the ghosts devouring them, everyone began to work hard to live. They began to live like normal humans. Some went out to hunt, some weaved, and some began to plant some fruits and seeds they found in the wild. The appearance of Zichun and Angus attracted some people's attention. After a brief moment of shock, there were cheers. There were other hunters guarding here, and when they heard the noise, they were slightly surprised when they saw Zichun and Angus. Following that, the other party laughed. Zichun walked forward, while Angus was a little nervous. The news spread quickly. Ibufan, Qingyi, and Li Haoqing heard the news and came. Seeing Zichun in good condition, Qingyi shouted excitedly, "Welcome home." This was Zichun's home. Hearing the word home, Zichun's heart was filled with emotion. Amazing! Ibufan gave Zichun a thumbs up. He admired him from the bottom of his heart. During this time, many people had speculated about Zichun's recent situation, and almost all of them were not optimistic. Unexpectedly, when they saw Zichun again, everything was normal. Even the hunter Zichun took away was normal. Back at the camp, Zichun told them about what happened during this time and his speculation. Ibufan was a little worried. If the forces in the depths really attacked them, then it would be troublesome. Zichun did not stay for long. He only stayed for a day and then left. Chapter 4058. Qingyi stared at Zichun's back for a long time without saying anything. Ibufan had already turned around and left. Angus kept a distance from the two of them. He watched as Zichun left and stood there without doing anything else. Zichun had chosen a very simple path to protect everyone here. Although he had chosen to stay here, the path was not easy either. First of all, there was rejection. It was obvious that he was being deliberately alienated. Because he was an awakened with the power of devour, he was like a tiger in a flock of sheep. I will protect my heart and everything that I want to protect. Angus clenched his fists and swore silently in his heart. Zichun's figure had already disappeared. After only one day, Zichun left. Apart from Qingyi and Li Haoqing, no one asked him to stay. After saying goodbye to everyone, Zichun headed deeper into the forest. If he could not do anything for the people behind him, this place would become the next place to be kept in captivity when the underworld wraiths attacked. The strength of the awakened was different. Some were comparable to the ghost, while some were weaker. The strength of the devourers was much stronger than the awakened. They could almost suppress the awakened, but they were not much stronger than the ghost. They were even weaker than the ghost, but they seemed to have an additional ability to devour humans. This made Zichun feel very conflicted. But perhaps it was also because of this that the awakened killed each other and eventually became the underworld wraiths. Hope was still following Zichun. It seemed to be very excited as it moved forward, jumping around everywhere. A day later, Zichun, who was resting with his back against a tree, opened his eyes. Hope rushed over from the treetops. Its body was more agile than an ape, and it was almost silent. When it came in front of Zichun, it stretched out its paw and pointed in a certain direction. It seemed to have found something. Let's go and have a look. Under Hope's lead, Zichun walked forward. A team of underworld wraiths took a short break in a cave in the mountain. One of the underworld wraiths sat on a big rock and said with some dissatisfaction, "It's been so long and we still haven't found anything. How long will it take to find them?" "Sir, don't worry. This area is only so big. We will definitely be able to find them." Another shadow ghost immediately stepped forward and said, "There are so many of them that they can't hide at all. I'm guessing that they've run to the outermost area." The tall wraith continued, "That's for the best. I'm already feeling weak. Once I find them, I'll have a good meal first." Hearing this, the ghost's expression changed. "My lord, this won't do. Among those people, there is a very powerful hunter. We are no match for him at all. Moreover, Our goal this time is only to find their hiding place, then join forces with the main force to capture them all in one fell swoop. This Ghost Awakened was obviously afraid that Zi-chan would do something stupid. Their previous plan had failed, so they were really afraid of Zi-chan. They didn't dare to make the slightest mistake again. The tall Yugue laughed coldly and said indifferently, "So what if they are awakened ones? Can they be stronger than us? When we get there, you just need to identify the other party, and I will definitely be able to devour him." "Oh, really?" A faint voice suddenly came from the high ground nearby. The few ghosts were surprised and looked up. They saw a human walking up. Two of the ghosts in the field recognized the human, and their faces couldn't help but change in shock. "Zi-chan. He's Zi-chan." One of the Yu ghosts recognized Zi-chan and cried out in alarm. At the same time, it retreated backward. When the tall Yugue heard this, his eyes lit up. "You're that hunter?" "That's it," Zi-chan said indifferently. "Die." The tall Yugue rushed towards Zi-chan. It was very excited, and its body was surrounded by the light of devouring. As the Yugue approached, a golden light flashed in front of Zi-chan. The charging Yugue suddenly stopped, and then his body fell forward. Instant kill. The other two Yugue's expression changed greatly. They didn't pay much attention to this hunter before. They didn't expect him to be so powerful. They looked at each other and wanted to escape. The two from before had already run away. Zi-chan held the golden blade in his hand and sneered, "You think you can run away? No one can run away." A moment later, the two Yugue and the two transformed Yugue were killed one after another. Zi-chan continued to move deeper. This time, his mood was much better. At least, the place where everyone lives will not be discovered. Next, Zi-chan went straight into the depths, where there was a large number of Yugue's residents. Zi-chan did not dare to enter rashly as there were too many of them. After thinking about it, Zi-chan decided to enter the place of confinement to take a look. The captive land was so large that Zi-chan had never seen it before. Fortunately, the tall door was not heavy, and there were no other Yugue guarding it. Zi-chan opened the door and walked in, then closed it again, trying not to be discovered. He began to look for the humans living here. It wasn't difficult to find, or rather, it was very conspicuous. Not long after, Zi-chan saw a group of humans. They were all standing there, and in front of them stood a Yugue. Zi-chan's eyes showed a hint of surprise. They didn't run when they saw the Yugue. How could the humans and ghosts in this place live in such harmony? He quietly sneaked over and decided to investigate. Ike stood in front of a group of humans and said indifferently, "At this time, no one will take the initiative to stand up." The humans were stupefied and stood there motionless. It's not that they didn't understand Ike's words, but they were already numb to this scene. Ike smiled. "Oh, that's interesting. It seems that you don't want to die. You all want to live. In that case, I'll call your names." The humans with blank expressions subconsciously shrank back. Ike's finger moved, moving among the crowd. "I'll do it." Suddenly, a sigh was heard as an old man walked out. "Devour me." Ike nodded with satisfaction. "That's right. One isn't enough. One more." Ike suddenly pointed at a woman holding a baby. "It's you." The woman's face instantly turned pale, but she didn't dare to resist. She glanced at the baby, tears in her eyes. Once she dies, this child who can't even walk won't live for long. I'll take her place. At this moment, a man stood up. It was the child's father. "I'll do it." Ike's eyes flashed with ridicule. "Why didn't you come out earlier? But since you're so protective of your family, I'll devour your family of 3, so that you won't be separated in life and death." Ike walked forward, his eyes full of cruelty. The child's father was angry, but he didn't dare to resist. He could only use his arms to protect the woman and child. Watching Ike walk over, Ike took a few steps forward, and suddenly blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Chapter 4059. The despairing family of 3, as well as the rest of the people around them, all looked at Ike in surprise. He suddenly stopped moving. Blood started to flow from the corner of his mouth, as if he was seriously injured. Just as everyone was puzzled, Ike's body started to sway. He couldn't even stand straight. The next moment, Ike fell to the ground. Everyone saw that there was an additional knife on his back, which had completely sunk into his body. Ike was dead. At the same time, a human like them stood behind the fallen Ike. Everyone was stunned. Zichun pulled out the knife from Ike's back, wiped away the blood on it, then looked at the petrified crowd. "Can I trouble you to help me?" Everyone still didn't react, but the old man who came out earlier still maintained his rationality. He stepped forward and said, "What orders do you have, sir?" Zichun pointed at Ike's body on the ground and said, "Please deal with him. Bury him or dig out his bones to make a weapon. It's up to you." Hearing the conversation between the two, Zichun already knew that this ghost called Ike was actually an awakened one in disguise. After becoming a ghost, he had the intelligence of a human and could communicate with other humans at will. This was also the reason why no one dared to run away when faced with being devoured by a ghost. The awakened underworld ghost's powerful intellect forced everyone not to run away. The old man was slightly stunned, as if he didn't understand what this stranger meant. He stood there without moving until Zichun repeated himself. Only then did he react. Dig out his bones? Obviously, he didn't dare to. He immediately called a few people to bring Ike's body to a place far away and bury it. Zichun sat on a big rock, thinking about what to do next. The others stood at a distance, curiously looking at this stranger who came from nowhere. The child and his mother, who had been saved, came to Zichun and handed him a few fruits. Zichun smiled and took it. "Thank you." "We should be thanking you, sir. If it wasn't for you, we would be dead already." After saying that, the mother carried the baby and left. After the old man dealt with the corpse, he returned with the father of the child he had saved. Then, he personally came to Zichun to thank him. Zichun, who was munching on the sweet fruit, pointed at the rock beside him and said, "Sit." The two of them sat down nervously. After a slight hesitation, the child's father asked, "Sir, are you from the outside?" "Yes." Zichun nodded. Both the old man and the young man's eyes lit up. Then, the young man asked, "Do you have any other instructions, sir?" Zichun threw away the core in his hand and said, "I really do have some things to arrange for you. My lord, please give your orders. I will be staying here for quite some time. So after I kill those specters, you will be in charge of disposing of their corpses as quickly as possible. You must not let the other specters find out." Zichun looked back at the man and said seriously, "Also, no matter what happens, you must not expose my existence. Once I am exposed, I will leave at any time, and you will continue to live a precarious life." Regardless of whether it was the man or the old man, they all nodded repeatedly and promised repeatedly. Ike's death didn't cause much of an impact on the Spectre faction called Apollo. Everything was normal. The next day, 2 more specters appeared. No one dared to escape. Everyone stood there, waiting for the specters to choose and then be devoured to death. The 2 specters had a playful smile on their faces. Just like Ike yesterday, they asked if anyone wanted to stand up. Behind the 2 of them, a golden light appeared. Zichun instantly killed one of the specters. The other specter reacted and immediately retreated to the side, shouting at the same time, "Who are you?" "The person who wants your life." Zichun's eyes were full of killing intent as he followed closely. Black light surrounded his body. That was the power of Devour. Sensing this power, the specter's expression changed again, and he cried out, "This is the power of Devour. How is this possible? Why didn't you become a specter?" "Because I never devour my own kind." Zichun tapped his foot, and the power of Devour converged on the golden blade. A layer of black light faintly appeared on the surface of the golden blade. The blade slashed down. Poof! The specter's blocking arms were cut off, and there was a fatal wound on his chest. The second specter died. Without Zichun's order, the old man and the young man immediately went forward and took care of the specter's body. Zichun put away the golden blade and walked in another direction. This was Zichun's current plan. He would wait here, and as long as a specter came in, he would kill it. What he didn't expect was that when he came here, he found that this was another card leak. He didn't need to guess to know that the leader of the faction called Apollo was also an awakened, but he couldn't control his Devour heart. On the same day, 3 more specters came. They didn't speak the human language, so they were obviously not awakened. They wanted to devour as soon as they came. Zichun easily killed the 3 real hell wraiths. It was a piece of cake. Specters were all specters, but whether it was strength or wisdom, the awakened ones were obviously stronger. On this day, 5 specters were killed. The next day, 8 more died one after another. On the third day, several specters were killed. For several days, the specters came in but didn't come out. This naturally attracted the attention of the Apollo faction. Then, more than a dozen specters came to investigate the situation. Early in the morning, Zichun ordered the humans to go as far as possible. When the specters came here, they didn't see any humans, so they continued to go deeper. Zichun secretly observed them. When they went a certain distance, Zichun decided to take action. He appeared in a flash and slashed down. The golden blade swept across the neck of a specter. Blood spurted out, followed by a head flying. The other specters were awakened and spread out, staring coldly at Zichun. Zichun rushed forward with his blade and rushed to the second target. Puff! The saber light formed from the golden armor was incredibly sharp, and as the saber light slashed down, the second dark ghost died. In the blink of an eye, 2 specters were killed. The other specters attacked. Zichun shifted his feet and used a technique that he didn't even know what it was. He dodged several attacks and attacked the third ghost with his saber. Another one died. Zichun's figure jumped, dodged the attack, and continued to attack. It was like a tiger fighting a pack of wolves. The tiger was fierce and powerful, but the pack of wolves was difficult to deal with. When the specters died one after another, Zichun's body was also covered with wounds left by the specter's claws. Zichun's eyes were extremely cold. The golden blade kept flashing, and the specters were injured even if they didn't die. Go find reinforcements. In the battle, a specter shouted loudly. It didn't matter if he didn't shout. As soon as he shouted, the other surviving specters began to retreat. Obviously, they all wanted to call for reinforcements. As a result, the fierce battle from before immediately turned into a battle of retreat. Chapter 4060. In this battle, the defeat of the Phantoms was somewhat beyond Zichun's expectations. At the same time, it also made him feel a lot more relaxed. The Phantoms fled in all directions, cleverly not in the same direction. It was a little difficult for Zichun to chase after them, but he didn't care. One of the Phantoms successfully avoided Zichun's pursuit and ran all the way until he finally saw the towering door. As long as he could get out of here, he would be safe. He glanced behind him and saw that Zichun did not chase after him. Thus, the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. But when he turned around, the smile froze. A black light flashed in front of his eyes and disappeared. He didn't even see what it was. Blood gushed out from his neck, and he fell into a pool of blood, dead. Hope, who had killed him in one blow, continued to hide. By the time Zichun arrived, there were already several corpses lying around. He gave Hope a thumbs up. Zichun didn't deal with the corpses on the ground because there was no need to. After such a big thing happened, the leader of this force, Apollo, would pay attention to it. Then, what awaited Zichun would be a devastating blow. He walked forward until he reached the door. He had already prepared himself for a fierce battle. There was still no news from the captivity, and no one came out. This made the Phantoms and Apollo's force worry. Gar came to Apollo's residence and told him of the seriousness of the matter. "Sir, something must have happened inside," Gar said solemnly. The leader of the Phantoms, named Apollo, waved his hand indifferently and said, "What can happen? You're worrying too much." Gar said in a deep voice, "The people who left last time haven't returned yet, and more than 40 of them have left the captivity. Something big must have happened inside." Apollo said, "If that's the case, then you take a few people inside and have a look." Gar shook his head and said, "A few people isn't enough? Then take 10 people inside. I don't believe that anything dangerous can happen in our captivity." Jared took his leave. Apollo was still sitting there, his eyes looking out of the window. Only his black, shiny eyes looked human. He seemed to be lost in his memories, and his eyes gradually became complicated. In the end, he took out a golden piece of armor. If Zichun were here, he would definitely be able to recognize this piece of armor. It was almost exactly the same as the one he could turn into a saber. After carefully observing it for a while, he put the piece of armor away. As a leader, He didn't seem to be worried at all about the captivity. Even a fool could tell that something had happened there. And it wasn't a small matter. Because recently, the number of underworld ghosts had been reduced by almost half. Garland brought people into the captive grounds. For safety reasons, he brought a dozen people in, but none of them returned. Apollo came out of his room and began to inspect his territory. The territory was very big, and there were many underworld ghosts. As he walked, he arrived at the altar castle and walked in. Inside, there were 4 ghosts sitting cross-legged. When they saw Apollo walk in, they immediately stood up. Apollo waved his hand, indicating that they didn't need to be so polite. The 4 ghosts still stood up. Apollo didn't come to this place often. This time, he might have something to tell them. Leader, I heard that there was an accident in our territory. People died for no reason? One of the ghosts asked. Some people are missing, but I've already sent Jared to check it out. Apollo said lightly, it shouldn't be a big deal. Whoever dares to have ideas about our territory, we must not let them go. The ghost said again. The other 3 ghosts were also indignant. Apollo looked at the altar castle with a complicated expression for a long time, then turned and left. Then, he strolled around the territory, but in fact, it was more like a dying king patrolling his territory for the last time, with a sense of sadness. After a round, he continued to return to his residence. He didn't wait for Jared to come back. He guessed that Jared wouldn't come back, but he still didn't send anyone to check. Everything in this territory was normal, but the number of underworld ghosts was decreasing, until Apollo smelled a faint smell of blood. Even if he became an underworld ghost and was only interested in souls, Apollo was still very sensitive to the smell of blood. At this moment, his expression was complicated, but there was also a trace of relief. Suddenly, there was a scream outside, followed by the sound of fighting, but it only lasted for a moment, and everything returned to normal. Apollo didn't leave the room until the door was pushed open, and a shadow appeared in his sight. In front of the shadow stood a person, a human with a knife stained with blood. Apollo was still sitting there, like a master. He reached out and said calmly, "Sit." Zichen, who was standing outside the door, hesitated for a moment, then walked in. During this time, he looked around sharply, worried that there was an ambush. Apollo quietly looked at Zichun, taking in his every expression. Zichun sat opposite Apollo and looked at him. In his hand, he held the golden knife tightly, and blood dripped down the tip of the knife. The atmosphere was silent and a little strange. Finally, I see an existence different from the rest. Apollo chuckled, but his smile was a little too ferocious because he was an underworld ghost. Zichun was still silent because Apollo was too calm. There was no shock, no surprise, not even a little killing intent. He was like a gentleman looking at a friend he had known for a long time. Although Zichun didn't think that was the right word. After all, the person in front of him was an underworld ghost who lived by devouring. He was obviously not a gentleman. Did you kill all my men? Apollo then asked the question. His tone was still so calm. Zichen's expression changed. It seemed that Apollo knew everything. He suddenly stood up, the veins on the back of his hand bulging. The golden knife in his hand trembled slightly, buzzing, and a murderous intent spread out, as if it would attack at any time. Apollo didn't seem to care. Instead, he asked, "How did you do it?" Zichun was stunned. "You're in the devouring state. So how did you maintain your human form?" Apollo continued to ask. His expression, which had been calm all this while, changed for the first time. Apollo's expression changed a lot. It was obvious that he was very concerned about this. "Tell me, how did you do it? How did you survive in your human form when you're in the devouring state?" Apollo, who had been calm all this while, asked anxiously. Zichen said, "It's very simple. Just don't devour." Apollo shook his head and said, "No, it's not easy at all. If you don't devour, you'll die." Zichen said, "Isn't that why I'm still alive?" "You're saying that you suppressed the devouring heart? How is that possible?" Apollo was in disbelief. "That's the truth." Zichen said, "If you suppress the thought of devouring and don't devour humans, you won't become an underworld ghost." Apollo glanced at the bloody knife in Zichen's hand. "It's easy to say, but it's almost impossible. I've done many experiments, but none of them worked. The thought of devouring will erode every part of the body. It can't be suppressed until you become an underworld ghost." Apollo laughed bitterly. "After becoming an underworld ghost, the thought of devouring will fade away. I've even suspected that the devouring state is a hurdle that God deliberately set for humans. As long as we cross that hurdle, we'll become an underworld ghost." Apollo looked at Zichun from head to toe. After a while, he said, "It wasn't until I met you that I realized that wasn't the case. At the very least, you're a miracle." "No, you're not just a miracle. You're a unique existence. Perhaps you're not from our world." Zichun shook his head and said, "I'm not a miracle. There was someone who was always by my side. He was also in the devouring state, and he was also a human. He didn't become an underworld ghost either." Zichun paused for a moment, then said, "Moreover, I'm also from this world. I was born and raised here, so I'm no different from you." There was a hint of surprise in Apollo's eyes, but he did not dwell on the question. He sighed and said, "I used to be ambitious and hoped to enter the land of sainthood. Who would have thought that the road ahead would end here?" "The land of sainthood?" Zichun's expression changed slightly. This was an unfamiliar place. "It's a legendary place in the depths of this world. It's said that if you keep going forward, you'll eventually find it." Apollo's eyes were full of longing. "Once you successfully reach that place, you'll become the master of this world." Zichun had never heard of that place, but when he heard Apollo say it, he was eager to go to the land of sainthood. It was as if there was a voice in the depths of his heart telling him that he had to go there. "Why are you telling me this?" Zichun suppressed the impulse in his heart and asked the question in his heart. This time, the process of dealing with the underworld ghosts was exceedingly smooth. Zichun, who thought that he would be surrounded, did not expect that he would be able to kill his way here so quickly. Previously, he had all kinds of guesses in his heart, but after this conversation, he knew that Apollo was not an arrogant leader. He had known about this for a long time. "Because I can't continue forward, but you can. Perhaps, in the end, you'll be able to see what I hope to see, but will never be able to." Apollo, who had been sitting there all this time, suddenly stood up and released a powerful aura. "But if you think that you can go deeper like this, then you're gravely mistaken. You've destroyed my territory. Today, one of us will die here." It was a calm conversation before, but in the next moment, the most violent battle broke out. The two of them faced off against each other. The sound of a fierce battle came from the room, and it lasted for about a quarter of an hour. After a quarter of an hour, the sound of the fierce battle disappeared. After a cup of tea's time, Zichun walked out of the room, clutching his abdomen. Blood flowed from the gaps of his fingers, and his face was extremely pale. In his other hand, he held two blood-stained golden pieces of armor. Chapter 4061. Zichun walked out of the room and sat on the doorstep. His wound was still bleeding. Although Apollo was a specter, he was the most imposing specter Zichun had ever seen. At the same time, he was also the most powerful specter. Both sides used their full strength in the battle. This was a battle where one of them had to die. No one dared to go easy on him. In the end, Zichun won by a little and won the final victory. However, this battle was not easy. But it was a very fair battle. Hope did not make a move at all. After resting for a while, Zichun left the empty territory. Before leaving, he took a look at the altar. It still did not collapse. However, there were no more spirits inside. Before the battle with Apollo, Zichun had gone to deal with the 4 spirits. When he returned to the captive land, Zichun activated the golden armor plate from Apollo. With a rumbling sound, the towering wall sank into the ground again. At the same time, the altar and other buildings that were still standing collapsed at the same time. At this point, Apollo's forces were destroyed forever. The humans living in the captive land were all stunned and at a loss. They did not know what had happened until they saw Zichun again. More and more people stood in front of Zichun. Zichun looked at them and said, "You are free now. All the spirits here are dead. Although there is no danger here, I still suggest you go to the outer area. There are awakened ones living there. They can protect you." Everyone could still see Zichen's bleeding wounds. Obviously, he had gone through an extremely fierce battle. So, they thanked him again and again. Zichen waved at them, then turned and left. He did not escort them, but went in alone. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, he had a conversation with Apollo, who was seriously injured and dying. The content of the conversation was about the place of holiness. So, he left. He wanted to go in and go to the place of holiness to find the place in his heart. 3 days later, Zichen's injuries had recovered. He gradually increased his speed. On the 7th sunrise, Zichen discovered the dwelling of the specters. The specters here were even more powerful than Apollo. As soon as Zichen appeared, he was spotted by the underworld ghosts. More than a dozen underworld ghosts came forward. 2 rays of golden light appeared in Zichen's hands. They were the 2 pieces of golden armor. The plate in his left hand turned into a golden light shield. This time, the plate in his right hand didn't turn into a saber. Instead, it turned into a long staff. As for why this was the case, Zichen wasn't sure. He just vaguely felt that this kind of battle was more convenient and more powerful. The reason why they were able to defeat Apollo was because Zichen had switched from a sword to a staff at a critical moment. His fighting style had also changed accordingly. With a staff in one hand and a shield in the other, Zichen rushed forward. During this time, his footsteps were nimble and his attacks were crafty. With a series of bangs, the dozen or so specters were all killed. With the protection of the shield, Zichen was almost unscathed. Zichen had used up a lot of energy in this battle. After the battle ended, he chose to retreat. After recovering, they continued forward. In the midst of the battle cries, the injured Zichen quickly fled. He kept running until he entered a dense forest. There were dozens of underworld ghosts behind him, and they chased after him with murderous intent. Catch him. Don't let him escape. The underworld ghost's voice came from outside the forest. Zichen leaned against a big tree and took deep breaths. Although he had a saber and a shield, as well as a set of proficient fighting techniques, Zichen was still at a disadvantage in the face of such a large number of enemies. After a short rest, Zichen continued to move forward, trying to lure the underworld ghosts deeper into the forest and then kill them one by one. One of the underworld ghosts looked around. Dozens of feet away from him, there was a companion. When he turned his head again, he saw a second companion. It could be said that there were 4 companions in his field of vision. This made him feel a lot more at ease. If the human dared to target any of his companions at this moment, the others would be able to support him in an instant. At this moment, a shadow suddenly appeared in his field of vision. The thorns on the side fell down as if they were being crushed by the wind. The underworld ghost's face changed drastically, and he suddenly turned around. A black light flashed in front of his eyes. Kill him. Then, he heard the shouts of his companions, but their voices were getting softer and softer. He didn't know if the human had run far away. In the end, his vision was pitch black, and he couldn't hear anything. When assassinating, Zichen's golden saber could kill with one blow. The other underworld ghosts rushed up, but Zichen didn't run away. Instead, he quickly went forward to fight. After about 10 breaths, he killed several underworld ghosts around him. When the other underworld ghosts surrounded him, he quickly opened a gap and escaped. Zichen was only one person, but he was like the most agile monkey in the world. In the blink of an eye, he was far away. The other underworld ghosts were furious and chased after him again. However, they encountered a second sneak attack from Zichen and suffered heavy losses. In the end, not a single underworld ghost was able to leave alive. Using a similar method, Zichen stayed here for a few months before completely destroying the organization. The moment Zichen walked out of the altar and the faction were destroyed. Including the place where the captives were kept, they all collapsed. He didn't get a new piece of armor. Walking towards the confused crowd, Zichen told them about the current situation, and everyone began to cheer. After Zichen pointed out a clear path for them, they continued to go deeper. In this manner, Zichen passed by many forces. Some of them took several months to destroy, while others took up to a year. From beginning to end, Zichen had left the outer area for more than 2,000 sunrises. He still hadn't reached the deepest part, and he still hadn't seen the place of sainthood. He hadn't even seen the other awakened human companions. Everything seemed to prove Apollo's words. Zichen's existence was different from the rest. As he went deeper, Zichen encountered more and more powerful enemies. At the same time, his combat strength also increased. His combination of staff and shield also became better. He didn't know what exactly he wanted. He only knew that as he walked deeper, there seemed to be a voice in his head telling him to go deeper and obtain the power of the ruler. Zichen continued to experience the baptism of battle. One after another, the leaders of the underworld ghosts were killed by him. Unknowingly, he already had the combat strength of a ruler. Finally, after more than 3,000 sunrises, Zichen arrived at the deepest part of the underworld ghosts and saw a place with golden light. After looking at the golden light, Zichen looked down at his staff and shield. They seemed to be the same color. He smiled. He had finally arrived at the place of sainthood. Chapter 4062. The land of holiness that Apollo wanted to see but never got to see had finally arrived. Along the way, Zichen had experienced countless battles. His already calm heart became excited at this moment. He gripped his staff and shield tightly as he walked forward. During this time, he was also on guard against any accidents that might happen. Zichen walked into the land of golden light and did not encounter any danger. But at the same time, he did not find anything. The space here seemed to be golden. Other than that, this place was completely empty, and there was nothing else. If he had to point out something, it would be that the air here seemed to be purer. After arriving here, even though there was nothing here, Zichen still felt unprecedentedly happy. The golden light fell on his body, making him feel warm. He walked forward and carefully examined his surroundings. Even after he had explored all the places, he still did not find anything. This place that Apollo called the land of holiness, this place that was said to be able to make one master, had nothing. Zichen felt a little depressed. After walking for so long, he still did not find anything. He felt tired, so he sat down. As usual, he began to absorb the air around him to recover. As the golden power entered his body, Zichen, who was gradually recovering, seemed to have fallen into a strange dream. He had not dreamed for a long time. The once clear dream had long been forgotten by the passage of time. And in this dream, Zichen obtained a technique called the Dark Ghost Devouring Soul Technique. This was a type of black power. Once it was used, his whole body would be covered in a black aura, like a ghost. It looked extremely terrifying. At the same time, this technique could also devour the power of others. Zichen was dreaming. The little beast named Hope, which had been following Zichen, appeared from Zichen's arms. It raised its head and looked around. Its bright eyes showed that it was deep in thought. After a while, it jumped onto Zichen's shoulder. At the same time, it followed Zichen's movements and formed a few strange seals. A powerful devouring force appeared from all directions, heading towards Hope and being absorbed by it. The golden light entered its body, but Hope's body emitted a pure black light. Hope fell into a trance. In the dream, Zichen was terrified because he was afraid that he would become a ghost. At this moment, other than the fact that he still looked like a human, he looked no different from a ghost. In fact, based on his devouring power, he was even stronger than the underworld ghost. In his field of vision, there were no less than hundreds and thousands of ghosts, but under his pressure, they did not dare to move at all. It was as if he had met a king, but he was clearly a human. The devouring power spread out from his body like a ripple, enveloping the specters. In the next moment, all of the specters began to lose their power. He single-handedly devoured all the specters. The power of the underworld ghosts came from all directions and entered Zichen's body. Zichen felt a strength he had never felt before. But in his heart, he was even more frightened and uneasy, because this was very similar to the sign of becoming a ghost. He wanted to give up, but found that the cultivation method was rapidly circulating, and it was not under his control at all. He was afraid of becoming a ghost, but his body was uncontrollably devouring the power, and it was a crazy devouring. In the golden world, perhaps because of Hope's influence, the golden power around Zichen became denser. But after this golden power entered Zichen's body, It was all converted into the black, devouring power. Zichun was like this, and so was Hope. There was no sunrise or sunset here, and he did not know the passage of time. The golden light represented everything. In Zichen's dream, many of the specters fell, and their power was devoured by him, turning into his own power. At this moment, he felt stronger than ever. He stretched out his hands, nervously looking at them, and when he found that his hands did not turn into ghost claws, he patted his cheeks and felt relieved. In his field of vision, all of the specters died, and then their corpses suddenly turned into golden light, like countless small particles floating up. They floated around, like thousands of small golden Xing-chun. Then, these golden particles all flew towards Zichun and entered his body. An even more violent aura came out of Zichun's body, and at the same time, he felt a tingling sensation all over his body, which was caused by the discomfort caused by the influx of too much power. It was like a balloon that had reached its limit, but gas was still being poured in, and there was a possibility of it exploding at any time. At this moment, Zichun felt like this. After the golden particles entered his body, he felt that his body had reached a limit, and it was as if it could explode at any time. He was very frightened, but also very helpless. Everything was out of his control. Just when Zichun felt that he was going to die here, the power that was about to burst his body disappeared in an instant. A golden light bloomed from his body, and it was in existence like a golden seed. When it appeared, all of the black devouring power was devoured by the golden seed. Then, the golden seed began to absorb power and grow. The old man sat at the edge of the abyss, quietly looking at the abyss in front of him. Zichun and Qingyi had been in there for a long time, but there was still no change in the abyss, and he did not know if it was a success or a failure. His expression seemed calm, but in his heart, he was still a little disappointed. This was because he had high hopes for Zichun and felt that he was different from the rest and that he should be able to succeed. The young boy came behind the old man and looked at the abyss in front of him with a flash of coldness in his eyes. He must have failed. The old man was silent. The young boy Xiao Shang continued, "If I had gone with senior sister, maybe we would have succeeded. Are you ready?" The old man suddenly asked. "I've been ready for a long time." The young boy could not wait, but when he thought of that woman, he became depressed. But that Shanya has not broken through yet, and she seems to be delaying on purpose. The old man said, "Then wait a little longer. Don't come into contact with her now. Everything will wait until she breaks through." The young boy was unwilling, and he was about to say something. Suddenly, the abyss in front of him trembled, and then a dazzling golden light bloomed from it. When the young boy saw the golden light, he was slightly stunned. The old man stood up, and there was a light in his eyes. "It's the aura of the spirit-devouring technique. They have succeeded." The old man's beard began to tremble, and his expression became extremely excited. However, the golden light was quickly extinguished, and the abyss in front of him returned to normal. Everything was like an illusion. Chapter 4063. The abyss in front of him returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. The old man's expression changed. Clearly, even he could not understand what was going on. Little Sheng asked, "What's going on?" This abyss had always been calm. There had never been any anomalies. This was the only time. The appearance of the golden light seems to mean that they succeeded, but the anomalies disappeared. "I don't know what's going on." The old man muttered. "Did an accident happen and they failed again?" The old man waved his hand, indicating for little Shang to leave. Although he was puzzled, the old man did not intend to explain. Little Shang could only leave. Just as he left, a figure appeared out of thin air. You saw it too, right? The person who appeared in front of the old man was a member of the Soul Devourer clan. "What do you think about this?" The old man was not surprised at all by his appearance. "Our people should have succeeded. I just don't know what happened." The Soul Devourer clan member's eyes flashed slightly. He said regretfully, "But they might have failed in the end." The old man had the same guess. In the dream, just as Zichun felt that his body was about to explode and die, a golden light appeared. The feeling of exploding disappeared. In the outside world, The black, devouring power that enveloped Zichen's body turned golden. The golden light shone, releasing a dazzling and eye-catching light. Hope, who was cultivating on Zichen's shoulder, did not have such a change. However, the light on his body became purer. Its quality was not inferior to Zichen's golden power at all. They were equivalent to two different extreme powers. At this moment, Zichen opened his eyes. His consciousness gradually woke up. In his mind, memories of techniques appeared one after another. Among them, the clearest was the combat technique. I see. The combat technique moves kept appearing in his mind. Looking at each move, Zichen finally understood why he was so proficient in using the staff and shield. Other than that, there was also an introduction to the Soul Devourer clan in his mind. The Soul Devourer clan. The early stage is awakening, the middle stage is devouring, and the late stage is qualitative change. Zichen stood up and stretched out his palm. The light of power flowed in his palm. This time, it was no longer black, but golden. The flowing golden power gave off a sense of perfection. There was a powerful aura circulating in his every movement. So, the so-called ruler's power is the complete power of the dark ghost devouring soul technique. Zichen sighed and said, "It seems that the true purpose of this sanctification ground is to obtain the complete dark ghost devouring soul technique." Zichen glanced around. The golden light here was much dimmer. The black staff reappeared in his hand, and he swept it toward the sky. A golden staff shadow broke through the horizon, directly tearing a hole in the air. Zichen tapped the ground with his feet and soared into the air like a bolt of golden lightning, disappearing into the sky. This is the power of the complete version of the dark ghost devouring soul technique. Standing in the air, Zichen looked down at the mountains and rivers below. He couldn't help but feel a sense of heroism. His gaze gradually turned into the distance. Since I'm living here, then I should do something for this world. It's time to end the oppression of the underworld ghosts. Zichen flew into the distance. At this moment, Zichen, who believed that he belonged to this world, decided to change it with his own strength. This time, after obtaining the golden power, his combat strength increased again, and he even had the ability to fly. He didn't go back the way he came. Instead, he went to another place. As far as the eye could see, the confinement ground was like a towering city wall, trapping humans inside and unable to come out. Yugue walked in from the door like a hunter on the hunt. But everything was reversed. Humans became the prey. Zichen went directly to the underworld ghost camp. In his field of vision, the camp was in sight. Zichen's golden staff appeared in his hand. As Zichen approached, some underworld ghosts noticed Zichen and rushed up with a roar. Zichen held the staff and swept it forward. A staff shadow shot out and hit the underworld ghost's chest. The staff flew back until it split a building in half. The huge movement alarmed the other underworld ghosts. Loud shouts rang out, and underworld ghosts appeared one after another. Looking at the underworld ghosts in his field of vision, Zichen took a step forward. The ground shook, and another golden staff shadow flew out, drawing an arc in the air. The underworld ghosts that rushed forward were all sent flying. After falling to the ground, there was no sound. Zichen's combat strength was unparalleled. Along the way, the staff shadow kept flashing. All the buildings and underworld ghosts that appeared were destroyed. Zichen killed his way to the underworld ghost leader. The underworld ghost leader looked at Zichen with a face full of horror. Zichen had no intention of holding back against the underworld ghosts that ate humans to survive. With a swing of the staff shadow directly drowned the leader and the building behind him. Boom! The building collapsed, and the underworld ghost leader died. Seeing this, the other underworld ghosts began to flee. Hope flew out from Zichen's side and flew into the distance. This time, not only did Zichen have the power to fly, but Hope also had the power to fly. Not long after, all the underworld ghosts here were killed. The altar fell, and the captive area collapsed. All the humans regained their freedom, but their faces were full of confusion. They did not know what had happened, until Zichen appeared in their field of vision. After seeing Zichen in the sky, all the humans knelt on the ground and prayed devoutly to Zichen. Zichen looked around and saw that there were more than 100,000 humans. According to the scale, This was definitely a large force among the underworld ghosts. Compared to Apollo, he was much more powerful. Zichun waved his hand, and a golden light appeared in his palm and flew in all directions. The golden light scattered in the sky, turning into countless small dots of light, and entered the bodies of the humans. This was the power of awakening. If someone was talented, they could take this opportunity to become an awakened human. However, they could only become an awakened human, not a devourer. You are free. After saying this, Zichun turned and left. On his shoulders stood a little black beast. Time passed, and the sun rose and set. In this world, the range of human activities became larger, and the number of awakened humans increased. The number of underworld ghosts decreased rapidly. One altar after another disappeared, and one underworld ghost force after another was destroyed. The humans of various forces began to communicate with each other, and human civilization began to multiply. During this period, no one would forget the figure of the sage standing in the sky, and the divine beast beside him. No one knew the name of the saint, but everyone remembered the godlike golden figure. It was his appearance that changed everything for the human race. There were many legends about the sage, but no one really remembered what the sage looked like. The only clear memory was that beside the sage, there was a little beast that would never grow up. And the little beast beside the sage was naturally a divine beast. Under the influence of human civilization, cities rose from the ground, and one after another, famous awakened humans protected the well-being of mankind with great perseverance. Time and time again, the awakened ones and the underworldly specters engaged in life and death battles, gradually driving the underworldly specters to another location. It was impossible for them to be destroyed forever. Or rather, it was impossible for them to be destroyed temporarily. In a place called Saint Arrival City, a human sitting cross-legged in cultivation suddenly released a powerful aura. He had awakened. He stood up and immediately kowtowed to the sky in a very sincere manner. This kowtow was directed at the sage. Similar things happened almost every day. There were villages, cities, and human tribes. Time seemed to have lost its meaning to Zichun. He had long forgotten how many sunrises he had experienced. He measured the size of this world with his feet and stepped into all the areas where humans lived. Originally, he abhorred evil and did not let any underworld ghosts go. But after losing the underworld ghosts, there would often be some humans who were crueler than the underworld ghosts. Although they were humans, the things they did were crueler than the underworld ghosts. Gradually, Zichun found that because there were no enemies, some humans' evil thoughts were maximized. So in the end, Zichun would intentionally or unintentionally let some underworld ghosts go. Finally, there were no more captive areas in sight. After walking for who knows how long, Zichun finally felt tired. He decided to go back, because there was another place, where there were people he was familiar with, and also people he cared about. The Bufon tribe was a large tribe with a large population. Although it was located in a remote area, it was a very famous trading center. Because this tribe was the first force to have the ability to protect humans. The leader was called Bufon, and it was said that he was a powerful awakened human. The second leader, Qing, was a very beautiful woman. There had always been rumors that Qing, who did not care much about affairs, was actually the wife of the leader, Bufon. The third leader, August, very few people knew his name. He rarely appeared and was extremely mysterious, but there had always been rumors that he was the most powerful existence in the Bufon tribe. On this day, a man and a beast arrived outside the Bufon tribe. Many people glanced at the arrival of this stranger, but they were indifferent. It was another admirer and imitator of the sage, but he was too poor to even buy a golden robe. The legend of the sage had long spread to all the places where humans lived in this world. Because of the worship of the sage, many people began to imitate him, wearing golden robes and bringing along a small beast. In this Bufon tribe, there were no less than 20 imitators who came every day. Along the way, Zichun was already used to those imitators, and when those people saw Zichun's poor appearance, they would often laugh in disdain. Zichun looked at the territory that was countless times bigger than before, and the corner of his mouth could not help but smile. Since he was back, he naturally had to find a friend. He sensed Qingyi's existence and directly walked to her residence. But before he could reach Qingyi's door, Zichun was stopped by two people. Outsiders are forbidden to set foot in this place. Leave quickly. Chapter 4064. A commotion broke out in the quiet Bufon tribe. More and more tribesmen gathered here, their faces filled with disbelief. The two guards from before seemed to have been petrified. It wasn't that they hadn't seen much of the world, it was just that the scene before was too shocking. The shabby-looking impersonator that they had stopped had actually been personally invited inside by the Qingyi clan's leader. If that was the case, it would be fine. What shocked them the most was that when Qingyi chief came out and saw the impersonator, the first thing she did was give him a hug. Even though Bufon chief and Qingyi chief were rumored to have an ambiguous relationship, their relationship wasn't so good that they would hug each other in public. The people who gathered here also saw the scene before, so they gathered here to discuss. Which faction is that impersonator from? Why haven't we seen him before? He looks very young. Could he be the child of some faction's leader? How is that possible? He must be the second chief's friend. The second chief doesn't even care about the head chief. Why would she care about another chief's child? But I've never heard of the second chief having a male friend. Asterisk, 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 not bad. You're already a chief. After entering Qingyi's room, Zichen's mood improved a lot, so he started to joke around. What else could it be? Qingyi couldn't hide the smile in her eyes. You don't have any position. Why didn't you bow when you saw the chief? Then, Qingyi gave Zichen a hug. Feeling Zichen's aura, Qingyi's eyes became moist. I knew you would be fine. I knew that the legendary saint must be you. Although she had some guesses in her heart, it was different from seeing Zichen in person. All her previous worries had disappeared at this moment. Zichen patted Qingyi's back gently and comforted her with a smile. Zichen, are you back? Suddenly, a loud shout came from outside. Although the voice sounded old, it was full of energy. After so many years, Zichen could still recognize the voice. It was his cheap grandfather. They had different names, but they were related by blood, Li Haoqing. When the two of them separated, Li Haoqing had already walked in from outside without even knocking on the door. Seeing the two of them standing there without doing anything else, the old man seemed a little disappointed. He still remembered the cave from back then. Unfortunately, nothing happened between the two of them at that time. Otherwise, they might have had a child. To be able to make that last Qingyi throw herself into your arms, I knew that you were back. Li Haoqing laughed loudly. It was unknown if he was deliberately trying to let the people outside hear him. On Qingyi's face, there was a rare shy expression. Zichen looked at Li Haoqing from head to toe. Your body is quite strong. Of course, Li Haoqing said. I'm still waiting to help you take care of your children. For some of the older generation, it wasn't difficult to guess Zichen's identity. After all, Zichen had contributed a lot to this faction back then. Let's go. Grandpa will bring you guys for a drink. Li Haoqing was very enthusiastic, but Zichen felt like he was being scolded. When the three of them walked out of the room, there was already a group of people outside. Everyone looked at Zichen curiously. Li Haoqing waved his hand and said, Disperse. What's there to see? Although Li Haoqing was not the leader, his prestige in the tribe was still very high. After all, he was an old hunter and his combat strength was not weak. As his voice fell, the crowd dispersed. However, their eyes were still full of curiosity towards Zichen. They all wanted to know what his relationship with Qingyi was. Zichen, it's really you. A pleasantly surprised voice came from behind. The crowd parted and someone came forward. It was Yi Bufon. He was followed by a few strong and sturdy guards. Wherever he passed, everyone would salute Yi Bufon and respectfully address him as their leader. Zichen's face also had a smile. Yi Bufon stepped forward and gave Zichen a hug. Why didn't you inform me in advance that you were coming? Qingyi and I could have picked you up. This is his home. What's there to pick up? Li Haoqing, who was standing at the side, said calmly. The smile on Yi Bufon's face did not fade. He continued Li Haoqing's words and said, It's your home. But after all, you haven't been back for a long time. Look at this place, isn't it completely different from before? Zichen nodded and said, The changes are quite big. I almost couldn't recognize it. That's right. I've spent a lot of effort to develop the tribe over the years. Ibufan joked. Look, I've become a lot more haggard. Hearing the implication in Ibufan's words, Zichun said, I'm just back to take a look. I won't stay for long. Li Haoqing's face changed. Even Qingyi's expression changed. Only Ibufan's smile seemed to have become more sincere. Zichun, where are you going? Li Haoqing said, Qingyi and I will follow you wherever you go. The smile on Ibufan's face faded slightly. At this moment, a group of people came from behind. The leader was an old man. When he saw Zichun, he knelt down in front of Zichun emotionally. When he knelt down, everyone behind him knelt down as well. Sir, it's me. You saved my family back then. The old man raised his head and looked at Zichun emotionally. Beside the old man, a middle-aged man knelt down. On the other side, there was an old woman. Zichun suddenly realized that they were the family of 3 in Apollo's territory. However, those who were in the prime of their lives had turned into old men, and the children had grown up into adults. Oh, it's you. Get up quickly. Zichun immediately went forward and helped the old man up. All of you, get up too. The people behind were all from Apollo's territory. They were all here and were living a good life here. Just as these people got up, another group of people came and knelt down. They were all the people that Zichun had saved from the captivity. Ibufan looked at the people in front of him and could no longer maintain the smile on his face. Obviously, these people had never treated him, their leader, with such respect. News of Zichun's deeds also spread at this time. Everyone knew that so many people in the Bufan tribe were saved by Zichun. However, what they did not understand was, since that was the case, why was Zichun not among the leaders of the extraordinary tribes? Hope had always been standing on Zichun's shoulder. Not only had it seen everything that Zichun had experienced, but it was also a participant. Naturally, it knew about these people. Everyone, get up. Zichun waved his hand subconsciously and a golden light scattered in all directions. At this moment, Zichun's body shone with a golden light, which set off Hope's extraordinariness. At this moment, the surroundings suddenly became quiet. It was as if everything was silent. Chapter 4065. The golden light on Zichun's body only appeared for a very short time, and it was just a subconscious action. He just wanted to give the people here some hope that some awakened ones would appear. Who knew that his identity would be recognized? The people who were standing around and watching the show immediately knelt down with pious faces. They were extremely shocked, because many people had seen Zichun before, but they only thought that he was a poor imitator. The people who had knelt and stood up earlier knelt down again. Their expressions were even more excited. It turned out that they had known the sage for a long time. Ibufan's expression changed again, and he could not believe all this. Qingyi covered her mouth, and tears welled up in her eyes. This was Zichun, who had disappeared for many years. He had been doing great things all this time. Although he was a human, he had already become a sage. Li Haoqing's body was also trembling. He, who did not kneel, was more excited than anyone else. At the same time, he felt proud to have Zichun as his grandson. Get up, everyone. Since his identity had been exposed, Zichun did not hide it anymore. His body shone with golden light, as if he was a real sage, who dared not to listen to the words of a sage. Those who had mocked Zichun before were even more frightened. Okay, you can all go back. Zichun waved his hand gently. This time, there was no golden light. Everyone bowed to Zichun again, and then left. Ibufan came forward and put his arm around Zichun's shoulder and said, Since you're back, don't leave. This is your home. Qingyi glanced at Ibufan, but did not say anything. Let's go. I'll treat you to a drink. Ibufan said to a person behind him, Go and call the 3rd leader here. Tell him that Zichun is back. Also, you don't have to follow us. After they left, Ibufan looked at Zichun from head to toe and said in amazement, Amazing, really amazing. I didn't expect that after so many years, you would become a sage. Zichun was a little unaccustomed to Ibufan's enthusiasm. They came to a tavern, and just as they sat down, the 3rd leader, Angus, arrived. Boss, it's really you. Angus's face had changed a little, but the look in his eyes remained the same. Seeing that the other party was still in his human form, Zichen finally smiled from the bottom of his heart. Angus came to Zichen's side and sat down, directly squeezing Ibufan away. He was still like the little brother who worshipped his boss in the past. Not bad. Zichen patted Angus on the shoulder and gave him a rare compliment. Angus waved his hand and signaled for the wine to be served first. Boss, I heard that you've become a saint. Do I look like one to you? Angus shook his head. No. In my heart, you've always been my boss. Zichen measured this world with his footsteps. There was only one person like Angus who had obtained the Devourer. This made it even harder to see how rare and precious the other party was. After all, Apollo had once tried to control his devouring thoughts, but failed. Qingyi sat on the other side of Zichen. Ibufan, who was pushed away, smiled bitterly. He raised his wine cup and said, Zichen, welcome home. Let me toast you. Ibufan only drank halfway before he left. Perhaps he felt that the atmosphere was not very lively. Both Li Haoqing and Angus did not give too much face to this leader. Qingyi naturally did not need to be said. After Ibufan left, Angus and Li Haoqing started to drink. At the same time, Li Haoqing also told Zichen about Ibufan's way of controlling people. He gave Angus the position of leader, but intentionally or unintentionally, he isolated Angus, making him unable to form his own force and team. Because of his relationship with Zichen, Angus could not leave. Therefore, he only had the title of leader and often cultivated in seclusion. If Bufan's tribe was in danger, Angus, who had the strongest combat power, would definitely not stand by and do nothing. Qingyi's position as the second leader was also given by Ibufan. In fact, according to his original plan, he wanted to take both the woman and the money. Unfortunately, Qingyi did not agree. The rumors about the two were deliberately spread by Ibufan, but Qingyi had never expressed her opinion. Ibufan has already treated this place as his personal territory and does not allow anyone to interfere. Li Haoqing glanced at Zichen. When he saw you coming back, he already had this intention. However, after knowing that you are the sage, he changed his mind and wants you to stay. Because the legendary sage's combat power is unparalleled, but he has never shown his true body. He has no desires and naturally does not care about power. Therefore, I guess he wants to use your fame to develop Bufan's tribe. Li Haoqing was the oldest, so he naturally saw things the most clearly. Angus said, if you plan to leave, we will go with you. There is no point in staying here. Li Haoqing nodded, and Qingyi did not have any objections. Zichen said, let's wait and see. When they walked out of the tavern, there were many people outside. Obviously, they all wanted to see the invincible sage. Let's disperse. Zichen waved his hand, and a strong wind appeared and swept the others away. Shall we go out for a walk? Zichen looked at Qingyi. Qingyi nodded. A golden light extended from under Zichen's feet, and then the two of them soared into the air and flew into the distance. There were exclamations all around. In the distance, Ibufan's expression began to change. The two of them left the tribe and then descended. Qingyi was a little uncomfortable. She tidied up her slightly messy hair. Zichen looked around and said, many things have changed since we came back here, but the environment here has not changed. Qingyi smiled and said, back then, this was where we met, living a precarious life. Let's go take a look again. Okay. The two of them set foot on the place where they used to live. The mountain was still there, and the caves on the mountain had traces of weathering and were covered by weeds and vegetation. They could vaguely see the appearance of the past, but it was a little difficult to find the place where they used to live. At this moment, the two of them did not have anything else to do. Qingyi, who was feeling playful, said, shall we look for the place where we used to live? Zichen had no objection. Then, the two of them began to look for the cave according to their memories. Zichen vaguely remembered that when Qingyi first came, Li Haoqing would leave every night and leave the cave to the two of them. At that time, the cave was Li Haoqing's only property. About 15 minutes later, Qingyi's voice sounded from one of the caves. Zichen, come quickly, I found it. There are the words we left behind back then. Zichen heard her voice and entered the cave. Indeed, he saw some words that were not very clear. This is what I wrote, and that is what you wrote. This seems to be the dream we had back then, and we wanted to become the people in the dream. Qingyi pointed in a direction. Zichun walked forward, wanting to see what he wrote. There was a smile on his face, as if he was admiring his childish actions back then. Chapter 4066. After reading the content, Zichun could no longer remain calm. Was this the dream from back then? I'm Zichun, from Bloody Battle City. I have friends there. There's Shanya, Longu Meng, and Wan He. There's also a ghost beside me. It used to be a ghost and a ghost, but now it's a combination. Today I saw Qingyi, so we knew each other before. We came to this world at the same time for the same thing. However, our memories seem to have deviated, and we've forgotten what we came here for. Qingyi's voice came from behind. Zichun, so we've met in a dream before, and we even know someone in common. In my memory, there's also a place called Bloody Battle City, where there are 3 races. Zichun didn't reply. Instead, he read the content in silence. Today I found nothing. Although I don't know what I'm looking for, my memory seems to have become blurry. If I hadn't seen the content yesterday, I would have forgotten. I have power in Bloody Battle City. I have skills. I know how to use the Holy Talisman technique, and I know martial arts. Seeing the words martial arts, Zichun fell into deep thought. If I hadn't come to this place again today, I would have forgotten that there was such a childish time. However, that's when we chase our dreams. Qingyi said with a smile. The content didn't resonate with him. Today, the ghost came to devour humans again. We can't go on like this. I'm very sure that it wasn't a dream. My memory is real, but I don't know why it's disappearing. Now I can only try my best to remember what I remember. I have a weapon, a staff, and a shield. I'm good at close combat. I have a holy talisman brush that I can't remember the name of. I can draw talismans for long-range attacks. The content was so clear that it was as if it had happened before. Back then, the 2 of them were so persistent, chasing their dreams every day. However, even the 2 of them didn't know what they were looking for. The ghost is a huge hidden danger. We've been raised in captivity. If we have the power in our dreams, it won't be a problem to deal with these ghosts. No, that's not a dream. I have that kind of memory. I believe it. We have to think of a way to deal with the ghost. It doesn't matter if it's a dream or not. If we don't get rid of the ghost, then we will have no future. However, I still firmly believe that the things in the dream were real, because this was the only way to explain why I had no memory of my previous life. I don't live in this place. I come from a place called Bloody Battle City. I came here to find something. I've already thought of a way to deal with the underworld ghost, and I've already started implementing it. That was the end of the story, as the next step was to continuously deal with the underworld ghosts. There was no time to chase dreams. After reading all the content, Zichun found it hard to calm down. He turned around and looked at Qingyi. At this moment, there was no smile on Qingyi's face. She seemed to have sunk into deep thought. There was silence in the cave. Ibufan stood in his own room with a gloomy expression on his face. This was because he had obtained a new clue about Zichun and Qingyi. The 2 had gone to the place where they used to live, and it was said that they had even drilled into a cave. We've already walked out of that place. Are you going back now to reminisce about the past, or do you want to return to your original life? The teacup in his hand shattered, and the tea spilled on the ground. Or should I say, rekindling old feelings? Zichun, although you're back, I absolutely won't allow you to destroy everything I have, even if you're an invincible saint. Men. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Qingyi collected her thoughts and said with some emotion, So, you and I were both dreamers back then. Zichun said, Was it just a dream? Qingyi looked at him. Was it not a dream? Zichun said, If it was a dream, why did you appear in my dream? And why did we have a common acquaintance in that dream? Qingyi shook her head and said, Perhaps this is the peculiarity of dreams. In that strange dream, we were omnipotent. Zichun's hand flashed with a golden light, and a staff and shield appeared in his hands at the same time. Qingyi looked at Zichun in confusion. Take a look at what I've recorded. Zichun walked over and began to carefully look at Zichun's memories. I don't know if the contents here are real or not, but I really did master the attack techniques of the staff and shield. They appeared in my mind naturally, and they helped me in a dangerous situation. Zichun said, also, I also know how to fight, but I've never learned it before. It's as if I learned it naturally. Qingyi thought for a moment and said, perhaps this is a coincidence? Zichun shook his head. Of course there are coincidences, but there's absolutely no such coincidence. Qingyi said, but if this is not a dream, how do you explain all this? Everyone has the memories of you and me growing up, and they can tell us everything we've experienced. This was clearly what Zichun was puzzled about. At first, he also thought that this was a dream, and as the situation became urgent, they had long forgotten about this matter. But today, seeing the words left behind, the memories of the past were gradually awakened. Wasn't the reason why these words were left behind to remind him not to forget? At this moment, thousands of people had gathered outside the Bufon tribe. Under the lead of their leader, they walked in this direction. The leader, Bufon, was furious. In private, there were rumors that the saint who had just appeared had seduced the leader's wife. Obviously, this was to catch them red-handed. Many people were in the mood to watch the show. Zichun couldn't accept that this was just a dream, but he couldn't give any explanation. All of a sudden, Hope jumped out and flew to the side of Zichun's name that he had written. Its body floated in the air, and then it pointed at the word ghost. Zichun and Qingyi were attracted by Hope's action. The next moment, Hope stretched out its little paw and pointed at itself. It did this 3 times, as if to tell Zichun an important truth. Zichun subconsciously said, you mean, you know the ghost? Hope shook its head, then pointed at the ghost and itself 3 times. Then it pointed at the ghost and itself 3 times, and repeated 3 times. Zichun looked at Hope's actions and its expression, and his expression gradually changed. You mean, they are you? Hope nodded. The ghost spirit is you, the underworld ghost is you, and similarly, the combination of the two is also you. Zichun stared at Hope. Is your original name Ghost? Hope continued to nod, its eyes shining. It wanted to tell Zichun that all of this was real. Boom. It was as if thunder had exploded in his mind, dispersing the fog. Countless rays of golden light bloomed from Zichun's body. As the golden light surged, the memories that had been sealed by the golden light in Zichun's mind were instantly unsealed. A memory appeared in his mind. It was when he was comprehending the black plate, and he shouted at the old voice that came from nowhere, I am Zichun. I come from the Saint Spirit realm, and I am here for the ghost's soul-devouring technique. The memories that had disappeared all those years ago resurfaced one by one. It was like a replay, and the memories that were originally blurry and even forgotten gradually became clear. It was when he had just gained consciousness, and Li Haoqing's ghostly cries rang in his ears. At that time, he had a grandfather who was extremely good to him. At that time, Zichun's memories were the clearest, and he could remember everything that had happened in Bloodbath City. However, as time passed, his memories began to fade. It was not until he met Qingyi that she realized this, and the two of them began to record the process of his memories disappearing in words in the cave. In the end, they still forgot everything. Even though Zichun had obtained the ghost's soul-devouring technique, his memories had not been awakened until he returned, and until he was guided by Hope. Looking at Hope again, Zichun could not help but smile. So you're here too. The name Spectre does sound better than Hope. Zichun held out his hand, and Ghost jumped onto Zichun's palm. It was very excited at this moment, but in this place, Hope's name is more appropriate. Zichun's gaze turned towards the outside of the cave. Because we always have hope. Qingyi looked at Zichun in confusion. Zichun, what's wrong? Zichun said, we should go. Go? Where to? Qingyi's eyes were filled with confusion. Back to our world. Zichun walked out of the cave, and Ghost jumped onto Zichun's shoulder. Apollo was right. The reason why I was able to maintain my sanity and not be corrupted by the ghost's soul-devouring technique is because I'm not from this world. Zichun held out his hand, and a golden light flowed in his palm. This was pure soul power, and also the power of the ghost's soul-devouring technique. Qingyi followed Zichen out, and then she saw many people in her field of vision. Zichen, you disappoint me. Ibufan roared. I treated you as a brother, but you actually did such a hateful thing. Zichen glanced at Ibufan and said, You should wake up? I should wake up. I shouldn't have trusted you. I shouldn't have treated you as a brother. Ibufan said angrily. Zichen ignored him and took out the 2 pieces of golden armor he had on him. At this moment, the armor pieces were still shining with a golden light. However, after waking up, Zichen could sense that they were no longer just armor pieces. Instead, they contained the power of golden rules. It was the power of law of this world. He looked up at the sky, and his gaze seemed to penetrate the blue sky and white clouds, looking at the deepest level. I see, Zichen murmured. He immediately released his palm, and then used the power of the ghost's soul-devouring technique to send the 2 scales into the sky. There, the law was incomplete, or it could be said that it was deliberately set up by some kind of restriction. These 2 light spots were important to complete the law, and also the key to open the restriction. Just as the 2 light spots entered the sky, ripples surged out from the dome of heaven. Then, a devouring force appeared. The whole world felt this devouring force, and then pieces of black scales flew up one after another. They merged in the sky, turned golden, and entered the law. As the law was completed, the anger on Ibufan's face gradually dissipated. Qingyi, who was puzzled, gradually regained her clarity. Li Haoqing, who heard the news from afar, suddenly stopped. The others didn't know what happened. They only thought that it was the anger of a sage that caused the world to lose its color, and they were all frightened. Boss, what's going on? Angus rushed over from afar. After learning about Ibufan's action, he immediately rushed over. We're leaving. Zichen looked at Angus and said, Leaving? Where to? Angus asked in confusion. Back to our world. Boss, what are you talking about? Why don't I understand? At this time, the changes in the world had ended, and the law here had become complete. Qingyi's eyes regained their clarity, and her unique aura filled the world. This aura even suppressed Zichen's. You succeeded? She looked at Zichen. Zichen nodded, then looked at Ibufan. What about you? Ibufan said in a deep voice. I didn't expect the law here to be so terrifying that it affected all of us. Zichen's gaze continued to move, and he looked in the last direction. That was Li Haoqing, Zichen's grandfather. I've been muddling along for so many years. I didn't expect to still be alive. He took a step forward, and a powerful aura surged from his body. Accompanied by this aura, the whole world seemed to shake and tremble. Li Haoqing's aura was even stronger than Qingyi's. Among the 4 of them, the original sage Zichen was the weakest. I can sense the aura of thunder from you. You're from the Holy Thunder clan of the Saint Spirit domain? Li Haoqing looked at Zichen. I'm Li Haoqing, the lord of the Holy Thunder clan's sacred talisman palace. Zichen's eyes were filled with shock, and he immediately bowed. Zichen greets the lord of the sacred talisman palace. At this moment, those who came to watch the show were all dumbfounded. All of a sudden, 3 beings that were even stronger than Saint Zichen appeared. Zichen's figure flashed, and he appeared in front of Angus. He patted Angus's shoulder and said, Cultivate well, maybe we'll meet again. Boss. Angus shouted, Take care. Zichen's figure soared into the sky, and a golden passage opened for him. He broke into the sky and disappeared. At the same time, Qingyi, Ibufan, and Li Haoqing also disappeared into the sky. Chapter 4067. The old man was still looking at the abyss. It had been decades since the last change. No one came out. It seemed to confirm the old man's guess. Just when they were about to succeed, some accident happened and led to failure. Although the old man was disappointed, he was also relieved. At least this time, they were the closest to success. This was a good sign. Next, as long as they kept sending people in, they would succeed one day. Xiaosheng was ready. He was waiting for Shanya to break through, and then the 2 of them would enter together. During this time, the old man had to prepare new candidates as future candidates. Whether it was Qingyi, Xiaosheng, or those who went in and never came out, they were all heavenly chosen. I'm going to go down and urge her. She's too slow. It's obvious that she's deliberately suppressing the speed of her breakthrough. Xiao Shang came behind the old man and expressed his dissatisfaction. No need. Let nature take its course, the old man said. But this isn't natural at all. That damn Zichun must have said something to her before he left. Xiao Shang said unhappily, otherwise, why can't a heavenly chosen reach the heavenly realm? You know, even that heavenly lady broke through. Don't do anything unnecessary, the old man said again, his tone becoming more and more stern. Got it. Xiao Shang retreated because he already had a plan in mind. It was a plan that could help Shanya break through quickly without violating the order. That was to use the fact that Zichun was in danger to make Shania feel pressured, so that she could break through quickly. Countless rays of golden light bloomed from the abyss in front of them without warning. The light was very sudden and very dazzling. The abyss, which was originally covered in darkness, had become pure gold. They did it. They did it. The old man stood up, looking very excited. This time, his perception was very clear. Xiao Shang turned around. After seeing this scene, he was also very surprised. A ray of light suddenly appeared. It was a member of the soul-devouring clan. After appearing, he carefully looked at the abyss in front of him. Then, another ray of light appeared. This time, it was the Oceanic clan, who was also the god in the hearts of all the Oceanic clan. The three powerful beings gathered and stared at the golden abyss in front of them. I can feel it. I can feel the laws gradually becoming complete, the old man said excitedly. After countless generations of attempts, we have finally succeeded. The sea god and the soul-devouring clan nodded repeatedly, unable to hide their excitement. Suddenly, a person appeared in the golden light. It was Zichun, who had come out first. Subsequently, Yi Bufan, Qing Yi, and Li Haoqing appeared. When Zichun saw the old man, he immediately cupped his fists and said, "Senior, I'm glad I didn't fail you." Then, he saw the sea god and was very surprised. As for the last member of the soul-devouring clan, he felt nervous. Fortunately, there was no hostility in the other party's eyes. In fact, there was even a hint of relief. "Master." Yi Bufan bowed respectfully to the soul-devouring clan member. Qingyi also greeted the old man as her master. Little Shang, who had been about to leave, ran over and called out, "Senior sister." He was very excited. Li Haoqing cupped his fist at the three of them and said emotionally, "You're finally back." Clearly, he had known these three powerful beings a long time ago. Then, the group of people came to the top of the gate in the sky. Zichun told them what had happened inside, and they all shook their heads. They had never imagined that there would be such a scene inside. If that was the case, those who had entered before must have died. If not, they would have become underworld ghosts. But in the end, they still died. Just as Zichen said that he wanted to hand over the complete underworld ghost soul-devouring technique, he was rejected by the old man. This was because what they wanted was not the underworld ghost soul-devouring technique, but the complete laws. The sea god looked at Zichun and said, "It's yours. You can take it without worry. Didn't you ask me last time why we are fighting here instead of going to higher places? Now, I can answer you. The large-scale fighting will probably stop soon, because the three clans have a new goal." They all looked at Zichun, and this made Zichun's expression change. "You're not thinking of going to the Saint Spirit Realm, are you?" To the humans of the Saint Spirit Realm, they were considered outsiders, or in other words, descenders. Li Haoqing said with a smile, "Don't worry, it's not a bad thing. The Saint Spirit Realm is big enough to accommodate the people here." Since the Temple Master had spoken, Zichun naturally had no objections. He missed his friends. Since they had a common goal, there was no need to talk about enemies. The three forces could sit down and discuss. The old man waved his hand, indicating that Zichun could leave first. "Zichun, I'll send you off." Qingyi stood up. Although she had woken up, her memories of the past still existed and had not disappeared. Qingyi had been with Zichun for a long time. After returning, Qingyi had obtained an exceedingly high cultivation base and could open any space at will. A passage appeared in front of Qingyi, and she walked in. Zichun followed. When he reappeared, Zichun found that he was already in his own room. After leaving for so many years, no one had come to Zichen's room. Because of the restriction, this place was still spotless. Qingyi sat down, but had no intention of leaving immediately. Zichun sat opposite Qingyi. "Aren't you going to see a friend?" Qingyi asked doubtfully. Zichun, on the other hand, didn't know how to respond. Before entering, he wasn't familiar with Qingyi at all, and even maintained a trace of vigilance towards her. However, after experiencing the same things inside, the two of them had obviously become friends. "Do you think it's inconvenient for me to stay here?" Qingyi asked again, as if she was asking the obvious. "Then I'll go out for a walk. You continue to stay here?" Zichun said tentatively. "You can't be serious, right?" Qingyi said again. "What?" Zichun was slightly stunned. "When we were inside, I said that I wanted to leave with you. You wouldn't think too much about it, right?" Qingyi sized up Zichun. "Of course not," Zichun said immediately. "That's good." Qingyi pretended to be relaxed. "I don't have any feelings for you. I was willing to follow you back then because I hated Ibufan." "Don't worry, I understand." Zichun nodded. "You really understand?" Qingyi looked into Zichun's eyes. "I really understand." Zichun replied simply and straightforwardly. "Let's go." A passage appeared in front of Qingyi, and Qingyi stepped into the passage, leaving very straightforwardly. This made Zichun a little confused. She came and left in a hurry? Chapter 4068. The door opened, and the aura of Bloody Battle City rushed out. This made Zichun feel like he hadn't felt it in a long time. Ghost jumped onto his shoulder and looked forward as well. Zichun tilted his head and looked at the little guy. "I really have to thank you." If it weren't for Ghost, Zichun didn't know how long it would take for him to wake up. Perhaps he would never wake up. If they weren't lucky and ran away quickly, I would have wiped them all out this time. From afar, a familiar voice could be heard. A smile appeared on Zichun's face. After not seeing him for so many years, the disdainful fatty actually knew how to brag. Zichun looked forward and saw several people walking over. Aside from Fatty, there was also Yunjun and a few others. They were all listening to Fatty's bragging. Suddenly, Butterball's voice stopped abruptly. He stared straight ahead as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He rubbed his eyes hard. Yunjun noticed the abnormality and looked forward as well. When he saw the figure, his expression changed. The others also looked in front of them in shock. Zichun smiled. "Why? Don't you recognize me? How can it be you? How can it be you?" Butterball ran over and said in disbelief. Yunjun also smiled as he walked forward. Zichun's sudden appearance surprised and delighted him. Of course, he believed that the other two would only be more excited when they found out. Butterball went forward and gave Zichun a bear hug. "Why did you suddenly appear? But this is pretty good. I'll bring you to battle from now on." Decades had passed, and Butterball was still an Earth soul. In fact, many people's realms hadn't changed. Only Lan Guming's improvement was as fast as lightning. She, who had become famous in a single battle, went into seclusion for just over 20 years before coming out again. At that time, she had already advanced to the heavenly soul realm. Such a breakthrough speed could be considered a miracle. What followed next was the nightmare of the soul-devouring clan. She had single-handedly killed all the heavenly souls of the soul-devouring clan, causing them to suffer heavy losses. After meeting the two, Zichun asked about their situation. He was surprised to learn that Lan Guming had broken through. The divine soul goddess had already grown up, so it was no longer a secret. Butterball patted Zichun on the shoulder and said, "You're not going anywhere now, right?" Zichun said, "What a coincidence. I have to go back." Butterball glanced at the residence behind Zichun. Zichun explained, "The mission has been completed and the goal has been achieved. It's time to return to my world." Butterball was slightly stunned. "Really?" Zichun gazed at the sky. "I've been away from home for too long. It's time to go back." Butterball realized that this was not a joke. The three of them went to look for Shanya. According to Butterball, ever since Zichun left, Shanya had been in seclusion. Even when Lan Guming came out of seclusion and fought on the battlefield, she was still in seclusion. When they arrived outside Shanya's room, Zichun gently activated the restriction. A moment later, the restriction was activated, and Shanya opened the door. Her eyes were still filled with doubt. Knowing that she was in seclusion, no one should have disturbed her. However, when she saw the smiling person in front of her, her expression immediately changed. Zichun? She shouted in disbelief. Zichun smiled and nodded. It's me. I've completed my mission and returned. A fragrant breeze caressed his face. Shanya had already jumped into Zichun's arms. Butterball and Yunjun stood to the side. The two of them looked at each other and pursed their lips. If others saw this, who knew how many people would be sad? Lan Guming had not returned from the battlefield. Only Shanya was here. About a day later, Lan Guming returned from the battlefield. Naturally, her battle results were brilliant. Seeing Zichun, she was very excited. I'm going to say goodbye to everyone. Do you want to come with me? These words were naturally directed at the two women. Butterball and Yunjun belonged to the battlefield. Naturally, this place belonged to them. Can we leave? Shanya asked, puzzled. Although the battle will continue, it won't be as tragic as before. If you want to leave, you can go back and take a look. Zichun had already confirmed this with Qingyi. According to the other party's methods, she could bring them to any place in this world. Shanya said, in that case, let's go back and take a look. In truth, she wanted to spend more time with Zichun because this farewell might be an eternal one. After staying in Bloodbath City for 2 days, the three of them bid farewell and left. Lan Guming already had the strength of a heavenly soul, while Zichun and Shanya were still earthly souls. However, Zichun did not plan to stay here any longer. After meeting his friends, he would leave. The Temple Lord knew the way out. After all, the Temple Lord had already returned and come back. Zichun's first stop was the Sacred Mountain. Shanya and Lan Guming went to find Lan Hongyi, while Zichun ascended the Sacred Mountain to see the Mountain Lord. The old man received Zichun at the peak of the Sacred Mountain. After hearing the news brought by Zichun, the old man became very excited. After being here for so many years, he could finally return. The passage will open once. I'll have to trouble the Mountain Lord to use the name of the Sacred Mountain to inform all the descenders in this world to gather at the Sacred Mountain and leave together. The Mountain Lord naturally had no objections. After leaving the Sacred Mountain, Zichun went to the Sacred Mountain City. At this moment, everyone had already gathered there. Besides Lan Hongyi, Noah was also here. It was rare for everyone to gather together. 2 days later, Zhu Jiao and Feng Wulian also received the news and arrived. It was said that the two of them came together. Whether it was the Jiao clan or the Feng clan, they were currently on the right track. After staying in the Sacred Mountain City for another 2 days, everyone went their separate ways. This separation might be an eternal one. Looking at everyone who was reluctant to leave, Zichun said, if you all cultivate well, we will be able to meet again when you leave this place. Remember, you can find me at the Holy Thunder Clan. Lan Hongyi and Noah returned to the Sacred Mountain, while Feng Wulian and Zhu Jiao went back together. The three of them went straight to Luowei City. After seeing all his friends and saying goodbye to everyone, it was finally time to leave. Although Shanya knew that this day would come, her eyes were still red. She was very reluctant to part. Lan Guming, on the other hand, was controlling his emotions. He was not as sad as Shanya. Zichun said, take care of yourselves. Perhaps we will meet again in the future. Can we really meet again? Shanya couldn't hold back her tears anymore. Zichun had said this many times, but she didn't really believe it. Zichun nodded and said, indeed, we can meet again. This world is gradually becoming complete. Once you reach a high level, you can step into another world and space. Finally, Zichun hugged the two girls. A transmission passage appeared behind Zichun and Qingyi walked out. It's time to go. This transmission was opened for Zichun alone. Chapter 4069. After bidding farewell for the last time, Zichun entered the passage. His back view disappeared from the eyes of the two girls. This passage seemed to be extremely long, and Zichun's mood was a little down. In these few days, he had experienced too many separations. Since you care so much, why don't you stay? Qingyi tilted her head and looked at Zichun in confusion. Zichun didn't know how to answer this question. He was naturally reluctant to part, But he still had many things to deal with in the Saint Spirit world. Most importantly, he had enemies there. In the years he wasn't there, he didn't know how his world developed. The long years were enough to make many people forget him and ignore his reputation. Looking at the passage that was still not finished, Zichen frowned and said, "Is this passage so long?" "TSK, I see that you're in a bad mood, so I want you to calm down." Qing-yi lightly stomped her foot. "You don't understand my good intentions at all." In his field of vision, the passage had already come to an end. Zichen walked out of the passage and found that it wasn't the Saint Spirit world, nor was it the place he came from. This was more like the environment in the Gate of the Sky. "There's nothing to be surprised about," Qing-yi said. "This is the Gate of the Sky. Before leaving, Master said to give you a small reward." "What reward?" Zichen asked curiously. "Go in and look for it yourself." Qing-yi pointed at the closed door in front of them. "The good things are inside. Whatever you find is yours. Are you very familiar with this place?" Zichen looked at Qing-yi. "What do you think?" Qing-yi didn't answer and asked back, "Then can you give me some friendly tips?" Zichen asked again. "There's no friendship between us. No tips." Qing-yi had a proud expression, deliberately took a few steps back, keeping a distance from Zichen. Zichen was helpless. He could only walk forward alone. In front of the tall door, Qing-yi snapped her fingers. The door opened by itself, and colorful treasure lights bloomed from it. This was a feeling that he hadn't felt in a long time. Zichen hadn't seen so many treasure lights in a long time. There were all kinds of soul weapons placed inside. They were colorful, and there were also some floating balls of light. Those were all techniques. For it to be placed in such a place, it was naturally not an ordinary technique. Even as far as the eye could see, there were many large miracle stones. There were so many things that Zichen was dazzled by them. He didn't know how to choose. "Master said that you can only take one set of the things here." Qing-yi's voice drifted over from outside the door. She didn't enter and continued to maintain her distance from Zichen. "A set?" Zichen's gaze began to shift. Clearly, a set of items meant more than one, and this was more cost-effective. This could be considered as Qing-yi's reminder to him. It could greatly reduce the scope of his actions. In the end, Zichen's gaze landed on a set of weapons. It was a black shield and a black spear. Just as his gaze landed on it, the soul power in his body began to circulate on its own. This was the power of the fighting technique, and at the same time, it was also the highest level of fighting technique. The power of death. Without any hesitation, Zichen made his choice. The black shield and spear flew towards Zichen, and he caught them in his hand. An ancient and heavy feeling spread out from them. "Your luck is not bad. These are the few ancient weapons in the world. It is said that they are used in conjunction with a certain technique." Qing-yi's voice rang out again. Clearly, this was her affirmation of Zichen's choice. Zichen put away the weapons and turned to leave. The door closed by itself. This time, it was Qing-yi who had helped him through a small back door. However, this great kindness was not something that could be expressed with words. "You have taken the items. You can go now." Seeing Zichen walk out, Qing-yi pointed to the side where a spatial tunnel appeared. It turned out that the tunnel to leave was controlled by the Gate of the Sky. It could be opened at any time. Zichen clasped his fists at Qing-yi and thanked her. Then, he stepped into the tunnel. The moment he entered the passageway, it was as if a strong force had landed on Zichen's body. This was a tearing force. When this force appeared, Zichen felt as if his body was about to be torn apart. In the next moment, he felt as if he had turned into a ray of light. This ray of light spun rapidly in the space until his consciousness completely returned. He saw himself standing motionless on the spot. Zichen, who still vaguely remembered the scene from back then, was now looking at him from head to toe. When he first came here, his physical body and power were separated. Only his soul left. However, looking at it now, everything was normal. It was as if it was just a dream. He mobilized his power again and activated the power of the ancient thunder flame. It was still the power of 6 stars. Sensing his soul, it was also 6 stars. As for the Earth Soul realm, it did not exist. Was it a dream? Soon, Zichen realized that this was not a dream. It was real. because the black soul power that he had condensed using the dark ghost soul devouring technique had turned golden. This was the power of the complete dark ghost soul devouring technique. In addition, the memory of the combat technique was still in his mind. The soul weapon was also there. With a flash of light, the holy talisman brush appeared. It was the unfathomable after the fusion. It seemed that everything was real, and this time, he had finally returned. The pressure that had weighed down on him when he first entered had also disappeared. Zichun turned around and saw a passage appear behind him. Temple Master, time is running out. What should we do? A young man looked at the Temple Master of the Holy Talisman Palace and said with a frown, "Where is the person I asked you to recruit? Has there been no movement?" The Deputy Temple Master of the Holy Talisman Palace, Fu Lao, looked at the young man beside him. The minimum requirement for this gathering of the 4 clans is a 5-star Holy Talisman Master. Even with the name of the Holy Thunder Clan, we can't recruit them. The young man said, "There were a few candidates, but for some reason, they suddenly rejected us." Rejected? Who would reject the Holy Thunder Clan? I asked around in private. It seems to have something to do with the Leizheng family. The young man looked around carefully. After seeing that there was no one else, he said in a low voice, "It's the Leizheng family again." Fu Lao's eyes flashed with anger. The young man said again, "Who asked the Leizheng family to suffer a great loss last time? Not only did they not gain anything in the immortal region, but they also suffered a great loss. Moreover, when they entered the Holy Talisman realm last time, almost all the Holy Talisman Masters raised by the Leizheng family went in." Speaking of this, Fu Lao could only smile bitterly. It was not just the Leizheng family. In order to strengthen the Holy Talisman Dao of the Holy Thunder Clan, the Holy Talisman Masters of the Holy Talisman Palace and other Holy Talisman Masters had all gone in. Who knew that they would be gone for hundreds of years? There had been rumors that the Holy Talisman Masters who went in had all been wiped out. This matter not only alarmed the higher-ups, but even the Holy Sage was alarmed and asked about it. However, no one could say for sure what happened to those people. And this time, no one would believe that the other 3 Holy Talisman clans did not intend to suppress the Holy Thunder Clan by organizing such a gathering. After all, the Holy Thunder Clan had benefited the most from the trip to the Immortal Region last time. Everyone was jealous. Just as the 2 were at their wits' end, a ray of light suddenly appeared in the sky. Chapter 4070. The sudden appearance of the passageway gave the 2 of them a fright. One must know that this was the sacred Talisman Palace. No one could casually enter, and no one could forcefully open a passageway to barge in. Just as the 2 of them were on guard to see if there was an unknown enemy approaching, they saw the person clearly. For a moment, their faces were filled with shock. It was Zichun, the Zichun who had disappeared for hundreds of years. Zichun? Old Fu couldn't believe what he was seeing, and he shouted. The young man was also very surprised. Compared to hundreds of years ago, the other party's appearance hadn't changed at all. There had always been a rumor in the outside world that an accident had occurred when the sacred Talisman realm opened hundreds of years ago, causing the Holy Thunder Clan to be completely annihilated. I'm finally back. Looking at this familiar place, Zichun sighed. It had been a long time. Then, he saw Fu Lao and saluted Fu Lao with cupped fists. You're finally back. Fu Lao looked at the passageway above and said excitedly, Where are the others? When did they come back? However, he soon realized that the passageway was slowly closing. Fu Lao was slightly taken aback and said nervously, You're the only one who came back? Where are the others? Fu Lao, don't worry. The others are fine. They just can't come back for the time being. Zichun saw the change in Fu Lao's expression and explained, They're really fine? Fu Lao couldn't believe it. They're really fine. Zichun nodded and promised, That's good, that's good. Fu Lao heaved a sigh of relief and said with a look of relief, You came back in time. You've saved our Holy Thunder Clan. Zichun was a little puzzled. The 4 sacred clans have organized a gathering of sacred talisman masters this time. It is said that they have made a new discovery, but the prerequisite is that they must be at least a 5-star sacred talisman master. After hearing Fu Lao's explanation, Zichun understood Fu Lao's difficulties. Back then, when the Holy Talisman realm opened, those who wanted to go and could go had all gone. Hence, the Holy Thunder clan no longer had so many qualified Holy Talisman masters. When will the party begin? Zichun asked. 7 days later, Fu Lao said. Zichun nodded. Since there was still time, he would go back first. He wondered how his world was developing. However, before they left, Zichun told Fu Lao to prepare a reception ground for the others. Besides the Holy Thunder clan, there were also sacred talisman masters from other clans. Actually, this was a good thing for the Holy Thunder clan because they could make use of this opportunity to befriend those sacred talisman masters with great potential. After leaving the sacred talisman palace, Zichun didn't go back immediately. Instead, he went to look for Grace. After the previous incident, she had been put in an important position by Lei Yu. Her current position shouldn't be low. Durag, who was in charge of reception, looked at Zichun with a strange gaze. This stranger is so arrogant. He actually wants to see the Lord. Doesn't he know the Lord's identity? Doesn't he know how busy the Lord is? Seeing that the other party was about to chase him away, Zichun said again. Just say that Zichun is back and is waiting for her outside. Those who could come here were of high status. This made Durag mutter to himself. Moreover, he seemed to have heard the name Zichun somewhere before. After a slight hesitation, he decided to pass on the message. It was better to avoid trouble. Perhaps he really was a friend of the Lord. If the Lord didn't want to see him, it wouldn't be too late for him to chase him away. However, Durag was just a receptionist. It wasn't easy for him to see the Lord because the Lord was too busy. It was said that the Lord was in his current position hundreds of years ago. However, after a great upheaval, the Lord was recognized by the higher-ups and her position continued to rise. However, he also heard some gossip. Over the years, the Lord seemed to have encountered some suppression from the outside world. Although she wasn't demoted, she had many things to do and was very busy. In fact, Durag was also a little nervous because he wasn't sure if the Lord would see him. Durag came to Grace's office. He also needed someone to announce his arrival before he could see the Lord. Durag? I know. Let him in. Durag, who was a little nervous, heard the Lord's voice. It was still so sweet. The Lord was a veritable beauty of Lei Yu. Durag was flattered that His Excellency knew about him. What's the matter? After Durag came in, Grace asked. It could be seen that her eyes were tired. She should have been working for a long time. At this moment, Durag suddenly regretted. Since the Lord was so busy, why did he bother the Lord? However, since he was here, he naturally had to make things clear. Otherwise, the Lord would definitely blame him for disturbing her. My lord, there is a man called Zichun outside. He said he came back and wants to see the Lord. Durag said, What? Grace suddenly stood up and said, What did you say? Say it again. Seeing the Lord's emotional state, Durag knew something was wrong. I said that the Lord is busy, but he still wants to see the Lord. Grace asked, What's his name? He said his name is Zichun. As soon as Durag's voice fell, he felt a gust of wind in front of him. There was a fragrance in the wind, but it was too strong. He couldn't help but step back. By the time he steadied himself, there was already no trace of his master. What's going on? Durag was stunned. Zichun didn't have to wait for too long before he saw Grace flying over from Lei Yu's location. When she arrived in front of Zichun, she quickly stopped. It's really you. Grace didn't dare to believe it. Zichun stretched out his arms and Grace walked forward. When old friends met, a hug was necessary. Durag didn't know what was going on. Hence, he quickly ran out and saw the two hugging. He was stunned again. What was going on? How could they hug each other in public? What kind of scandal was that? At this moment, there were many people in the surroundings. They all saw this scene. Some were shocked, while others didn't care. It's Zichun. I didn't expect him to come back. When the Holy Talisman realm opened, all the Holy Talisman masters left and never returned. It has been hundreds of years. Everyone thought something happened to them. I didn't expect them to come back. Discussions rang out in the surroundings. When Durag heard it, he suddenly understood why the name Zichun was so familiar. So it was the famous Zichun from hundreds of years ago. His feats were innumerable. He, who appeared out of nowhere, not only made all the members of the Holy Thunder Clan envious of him, but he also made many of the Holy Thunder Clan's major powers suffer a great loss. It was said that he blocked the door of the core disciples with his own strength, forcing the core disciples of several clans not to take a single step out of their rooms. In the Holy Thunder Clan, his battle prowess was unparalleled and he suppressed those of the same level. In the entire Holy Spirit world, he was still a heaven's pride and his famed sword. It was said that the last time he participated in the core disciple exam, he never returned. You look very tired. Do you have time? Can I treat you to something to eat? Zichun looked at Grace. I naturally didn't have time in the past, but now I do. Grace smiled and said, also, I came to invite you because once you come back, my good days will come. Chapter 4071. Zichun and Grace sat opposite each other by the window. Looking at the exhausted Grace, Zichun said, tell me what happened. The reason why he came to Grace first was to understand the recent situation, especially his own world. Grace naturally didn't hide anything from Zichun and told him what had happened in the past few hundred years. When Zichun and the others first entered the Holy Talisman realm, Grace was also the most valued. At the same time, it was also the lowest point for Lei Zhang and the other families. The mining in the Immortal region was still ongoing. As the greatest contributor, Zichun, the other forces of the Holy Thunder Clan naturally had to give him face. However, as time passed and the Holy Talisman Masters didn't return for a long time, there were some discordant voices. Of course, this was actually deliberately done by some people. At first, everyone was able to suppress it, but as time passed and the rumors spread, everything changed. Grace said, no one can really do anything to me, but some small tricks in the dark are inevitable. Recently, I have a lot of work. Look, I'm haggard. Zichun said, so, my world isn't optimistic either? Grace nodded and said, indeed. Moreover, the sage can't interfere in this kind of thing. After all, there are too many Holy Talisman Masters this time, and it has hurt the foundation of the Holy Thunder Clan. Of course, it's all secretly suppressing and not attacking or targeting on the surface. Then, Grace smiled bitterly and said, but it's just that it hasn't been exposed. In fact, everyone is well aware. If it wasn't for the contributions from the Immortal region, your people wouldn't have had a good time. After hesitating for a moment, Grace said, although the sage has instructed that no one dares to touch those resources, there are still various reasons to embezzle them. In the past, I could still manage, but now I can't even take care of myself. But it's all good now. You've already returned. I believe that from now on, the sky will clear up after the rain. Zichun smiled and said, you are confident? Grace said, it's not that I'm confident, but I believe in you. You didn't suffer a loss a few hundred years ago. So how could you suffer a loss a few hundred years later? I don't believe that you haven't improved in the past few hundred years. Zichun said, to be honest, my realm hasn't increased at all. Grace said in surprise, no way. Could it be that you've been trying to survive all these years? More or less, but I've learned quite a lot. I believe that in the near future, I'll be able to convert all my gains into power. Isn't it the same? That's why I believe in you, Zichun. Grace smiled and said, whether I can live a good life in the future depends on you. After eating, Zichun and Grace said goodbye. Since nothing serious happened, Zichun was relieved. Zichun did not return immediately. Instead, he took the most formal route. He wanted to see how the world was developing. Nothing unexpected happened during the repeated teleportations. However, when there was only one last teleportation away from Zichun's Tianwu world, Zichun found a problem. Next to that teleportation array, dozens of teleportation arrays were built. In fact, this was not strange. The teleportation arrays were often built together. However, what made Zichun feel strange was that the other teleportation arrays were all lit up, and people were coming and going. However, the teleportation array to the Tianwu world was not even deserted. It was not lit up at all. There was not a single person. Often, when someone planned to go to the Tianwu world, the people next to them would kindly remind them, causing them to change their minds. Zichun still remembered the scene when the world was suppressed. At that time, The teleportation array was always malfunctioning. At that time, Zichen made a big fuss and the master of that world, gone high, was executed. Now it seemed that this time, he had encountered the same target, but the enemy's methods were much better. Zichen walked forward and headed straight for the Tianwu world's teleportation array. Next to the teleportation array, the people who belonged to the Tianwu world did not find this strange. They did not even have any intention of soliciting him. He had to go to other places anyway, so there was no need to waste their breath. Not only would it not succeed, but it would also make the Tianwu world lose face. The current Tianwu world is not a place where everyone can go, isn't that so? As long as you go to the Tianwu world, you will be targeted and suppressed by the 18 factions when you go to the Holy Thunder Clan. The 18 factions are spread throughout almost the entire Holy Thunder Clan. Who dares to provoke them? Once you are targeted, you will no longer have a foothold in the Holy Thunder Clan. Zichen could hear the deliberate discussions even before he got close to them. Young man, are you going to the Tianwu world? Right at this moment, an old guard of the teleportation array asked kindly. Zichen nodded and said, "That's right. I plan to go there and take a look." Hearing this, the guards of the Tianwu world all stood up straight. The veteran was very surprised. Normally, when he said a few words, the other party would naturally understand his meaning and change his direction. The veteran did not care where he went, as long as he did not go to the Tianwu world. Don't you know what has happened in the Tianwu world in recent years? The veteran asked again. He did not have an aggressive tone and seemed to be full of goodwill. Zichen smiled and said, "I don't know for the time being. I plan to go inside and take a look first." Young man, it's not wrong to be curious, but you don't need to be curious all the time. Moreover, if you really want to know what has happened in the Tianwu world, there is no need to go to the Tianwu world. I can tell you. Just as the veteran said this, Zichen noticed that the expressions of the guards of the Tianwu continent did not change much. They did not have any intention of stopping him. It was as if this had happened more than once or twice. As for the guards of the other transmission arrays, they had a look of ridicule on their faces. One of them said, "Old Chung, what's the use of saying so much? This kid is deliberately pretending to be stupid. Why don't you just let him go in? After all, the one who will not be able to survive in the future is him, not you. Why do you have to persuade him so earnestly every time?" The veteran named Old Chung chuckled and said, "Young man, this is your first time here. He doesn't know much about this place. It's good to guide him." Then, he looked at Zichen and said, "Young man, do you want to listen to a story? As long as you have a jug of wine, I will accompany you to talk about the changes in this era and the rotation of power." After seeing that these people were not acting, Zichen smiled and threw out a jug of good wine. Old Chung took the wine and planned to leave with the young man. Unexpectedly, at this moment, he saw the young man still walking forward. Old Chung shouted, "Young man, do you have to go?" Zichen turned back and said, "Yes, because this is my world. No matter what has happened, I have to go back and take a look, right? If a jug of wine is not enough, you can come to the Tianwu world to drink with me at any time. My name is Zichen." Chapter 4072. The veteran was stunned, as if he had been petrified. If it wasn't for the fact that the wine jug in his hand was extremely exquisite and extraordinary, he might have been so shocked that he dropped it. Beside the Tianwu world's teleportation array, the four guards stood with their backs straight, but their eyes were filled with excitement. After waiting for so many years, they had finally waited for this day. As for the others, they were all shocked. Zichen, the master of the Tianwu world? The person who had shaken the Saint Spirit world hundreds of years ago had actually returned after disappearing for hundreds of years? Moreover, he had returned in such a way. The veteran's hands were still trembling, but he was the first to react. "What are you all still standing there for? Hurry up and send the news back." After saying this, the veteran looked up at the sky. The sky was about to change. As the master of the Tianwu world, Zichen didn't need to make things difficult for those guards. Moreover, although the veteran was from an enemy force, Zichen had a good impression of him. After returning to his own world, the Tianwu continent sensed something. Countless laws appeared, and all kinds of strange phenomena appeared in the sky. Compared to hundreds of years ago, the Tianwu continent had become very deserted. The people living in the various cities all looked up at the strange phenomenon in the sky, very puzzled. The laws appeared in the sky, turning into all kinds of auspicious signs. There were flying dragons, true phoenixes, and all kinds of auspicious beasts that constantly galloped in the sky. The already dense spiritual energy of heaven and earth seemed to have become even denser at this moment. In fact, it became even more lively. If there was any difference compared to before, many people could say that it was vitality. It was as if at this moment, the Tianwu continent had been reborn, and it was no longer lethargic. In the end, all the auspicious signs gathered towards a certain place. The auspicious signs came to the sky and kowtowed towards a certain place in the world. Zichun waved his sleeve, and a force shot into the sky, causing the auspicious signs to disappear. "I'm back." The auspicious signs disappeared. Zichun said this sentence, and it spread throughout the continent in the form of laws. All living beings, including the humans who were in seclusion, heard Zichun's words. At this moment, everyone knew of Zichun's return. In the room, Xiaolina, who was mentally and physically exhausted, suddenly had a bright light in her eyes and stood up. She ran out of the room and looked up at the sky. In seclusion, Lei Lan opened her eyes. She was unable to help with the operation of the world. She could only use her absolute power to protect the martial heaven continent. Now, Zichun was back. Jolina had just walked out of the room when a ray of light appeared in front of her eyes. It was Zichun. Looking at the human in front of her, Jolina didn't know what to say. She originally had too much to say, but after seeing Zichun, she found that she couldn't say a word. Zichun held Jolina in his arms and said softly, "You've been tired all these years." Feeling Zichun's firm chest, Jolina's heart seemed to calm down. All her uneasiness and anxiety seemed to disappear at this moment. After 2 drops of tears fell, she returned to her original self. It seemed that she had become that decisive and capable Jolina again. How many powers have left? Zichun still didn't let go of Jolina. Many. Jolina didn't struggle. For her, this kind of moment was extremely rare. Naturally, the longer the better. Remember them. If they come again, they'll have to pay 5 times the price, said Zichun. 10 times. Jolina's words were irresistible. Seeing Zichun again, her confidence returned. After a long time, they separated. Jolina said, "You're all back?" Zichun said, "No, just me." "What about the others?" "It'll be a while before they return. As long as they don't die." Zichun looked around. Previously, he'd already understood the situation of the entire world through the laws. "The current situation is much better than I expected." Jolina said, "You're not allowed to comfort me." Zichun said, "I'm not comforting you. I'm telling the truth. I haven't returned for many years. I think those enemies have long since become impatient. I wouldn't be surprised if they took over this world." "What do you plan to do next?" asked Jolina. "First, I'll raise the teleportation array fee to 1 immortal stone," said Zichun. "If you want to gather information, you naturally have to pay a price." Jolina nodded. "That's fine. At least we can earn back some teleportation interest." After that, Zichun met with Lei Lan and chatted with her about the trial. Not long after Zichun entered, the 4 guards received the news from inside. At first, they were stunned. That was because the teleportation array had always been free. Even so, no one came. Now, they directly raised the price, and it was a sky-high price. Would anyone still come? However, they naturally couldn't disobey the orders of their superiors. Thus, they all stood there with their heads held high. However, the 4 of them were somewhat nervous. They weren't sure if anyone would come. Soon, a person came. Although the 4 of them didn't recognize him, they were completely sure that he was a Holy Spirit. Moreover, he was a Holy Spirit with an extremely high status. "Open the teleportation array." After the Holy Spirit arrived, he hurriedly said. Previously, the 4 of them had a discussion. They'd already used a forbidden technique to control the teleportation array in advance. Previously, everyone could enter, but now, only people could enter. "The teleportation fee is 1 immortal stone," said one of the guards. "What did you say?" The Holy Spirit was stunned. The fee is one immortal stone, the Holy Spirit repeated. However, this time, he was more confident. Have you gone mad? The Holy Spirit said angrily. Have you ever seen an immortal stone? Sir, I haven't seen an immortal stone. However, if you don't pay one immortal stone, the teleportation array can't be opened. The guard replied loudly. The other guards around them all looked sideways. They were all somewhat dumbfounded. What was going on? Previously, no one had come in when they asked. Now, they actually dared to ask for an immortal stone as a reward? Was the master of the Tianwu world so poor that he had gone mad? Say that again? The Holy Spirit was obviously angry. My master said that if you don't have an immortal stone, then please go back, the guard said with his head held high. After so many years, he had never been so confident. Zichun, you've gone too far. Chapter 4073. The other guards were all dumbfounded. One immortal stone for each teleportation. They all thought that the owner of the Tianwu world had gone mad from poverty. Who would have thought that he would actually agree to it? To be honest, more than half of the people here had never seen an immortal stone before. Today was an eye-opener for them. The light emitted by the immortal stone was extremely dazzling. Even if it was the lowest grade, it was still an extremely valuable item. One immortal stone for each teleportation was really extravagant. To be honest, even an ordinary sacred spirit would not be able to accept it. The sacred spirit who had gone in earlier had an immortal stone with him. It was definitely extraordinary. The four guards who had been sullen for many years had never been so elated like today. The guard holding the immortal stone said with a smile, "Old Chung, how many bottles of wine do you think this thing can be exchanged for?" Although Old Chung was from an enemy force, the four of them had a good impression of him. Compared to the others, Old Chung was not only experienced, but also a good person. He would not flaunt his strength, and he would not deliberately mock those who were going to the Tianwu continent. He would even persuade them with kind words. The old guard shook his head and said, "It's hard to say. If it's what we usually drink, it can probably last for 1 or 2,000 years. Then what if it's the bottle that the Lord gave you earlier?" The guard asked again. "I think that wine is not ordinary." Old Chung smiled proudly. "Then it's even harder to say. Maybe I can exchange it for a bottle, or maybe I can't even exchange for a bottle." The guard was shocked. "It's that valuable? Don't you know who gave it to you?" Lao Cheng said proudly. "Who is your family's master? How can the things he gave out be ordinary? Besides, your passage fee is one immortal stone. My lord specially gave me this wine. How can it not be worth one immortal stone?" They were just chatting casually. Soon, a second person arrived. He also seemed to be in a hurry. The guard who had received the immortal stone said again, "One immortal stone for the teleportation fee." As he spoke, he still held the immortal stone in his hand. The person who came did not waste any time. He directly threw out one immortal stone and walked in. He was even more straightforward than the previous person. The other guard's eyes almost popped out. Wasn't this too easy? After entering the Tianwu continent, the person who had paid the first immortal stone wanted to see Zichun. Jolina received him personally. This standard was actually not low, and many years ago, it was already the highest standard of reception. However, in the past 100 years, the development of the Sky Martial continent had not been satisfactory, so no one cared about Jolina's identity. However, with Zichun's return, her confidence returned. "Where's Zichun? I want to see him." The man went straight to the point. After a servant served a cup of tea, Jolina said apologetically, "Unfortunately, my master has just returned from a trial. It is said that he has gained some insights, so he went into seclusion." "What? Seclusion?" the incomer said angrily. "He took so many Saint Talisman masters with him and disappeared for hundreds of years. Now that he's back, he's going into seclusion? What happened to our people?" "I'm sorry, but his lordship didn't tell me about this, so I can't ask about it without permission." Jolina suggested, "Why don't you go back first? When my master comes out of seclusion, I'll send someone to inform you." If it was any other time, the incomer would have turned and left. There was nothing to talk about with Jolina. However, when he thought of the price he had to pay to come here, he felt a little heartache. Naturally, he was unwilling to leave. Why don't everyone go back and wait for news and wait for Sir to come out of seclusion? No one went back, because once they went back, they would have to pay immortal stones the next time they came. They did not care much about one immortal stone, but they did not want to be ripped off a second time. Moreover, with the arrival of the major factions, they believed that Zichun would eventually appear. Those who wanted to wait outside for news had miscalculated. After waiting for a long time without news, and without getting any useful information from Fu Lao, they could only pay to come here. In the end, even the Leijing family sent people over. Almost all the major and minor factions gathered. The teacups were placed neatly on the table, and no one touched the tea. With so many people pressuring her, Jolena said that she would try to call for Sir to see if she could succeed. Everyone saw all this, but they did not say anything. They just waited patiently. Some people even cooperated with Jolena to put on a few plays. They could not afford to be silent and awkward, right? What if Zichun changed his mind? Would they have to do it all over again? Jolena was gone for an hour, and then she came back with good news. In view of everyone's sincerity and enthusiasm, Sir Zichun came out of seclusion early. Some people applauded, but there were also people who sneered disdainfully, such as the Leijing family's representative. Not long after, Zichun appeared in the hall. For a moment, everyone looked at Zichun. At the same time, there were also waves of probing auras around Zichun. The first thing everyone wanted to know was not the recent situation of their companions, but Zichun's current realm. Chapter 4074. Everyone was disappointed. No one was able to detect Zichun's true cultivation base with their spiritual senses. This was naturally done by Zichun on purpose. Since they were going to discuss a major matter, he naturally couldn't reveal his true strength. It's rare for all of you to come to the Sky Martial continent. I heard that in the past few hundred years, very few people have come here. After entering, Zichun went straight to the point. Everyone thought that Zichun would first exchange pleasantries with everyone. They didn't expect him to be so direct. This time around, I'm actually very disappointed because in the Holy Talisman realm, we worked hard and gained quite a lot. Although it took us some time to find the exit, everyone's growth has been witnessed by all of us. Zichun shook his head. I just didn't expect to see such a scene after returning. Dare I ask Zichun, what's the situation of the others? One of them stood up and asked. Zichun glanced at that person before sweeping his gaze around. Everyone wanted to know the answer. If there are no accidents, they should all be alive. Zichun didn't keep them in suspense and directly spoke about the topic that everyone was most concerned about. The majority of them heaved a sigh of relief. What do you mean by accidents? Another person asked. This person didn't have any direct conflict with Zichun. Clearly, he was someone chosen by the various powers to ask this question. Other than opportunities, there are also dangers in the Holy Talisman realm. There are also natives of the Holy Talisman realm. All of them have powerful soul energy, so it's natural for there to be deaths. Zichun continued, however, as long as they don't intentionally court death, they won't die under normal circumstances. Actually, what you should be most concerned about now isn't the life and death of those people. Instead, you should be more concerned about what's in that world. No matter what's in that world, it has nothing to do with us, right? That's just a training ground for Holy Talisman masters, right? Another person spoke. Zichun replied, you can say that, but you can also say that it's a place for refining souls. A place for refining souls? Everyone's expressions changed. That's right. That place is indeed an opportunity for Saint Symbol masters. However, it is more important for increasing one's soul power. It is a unique place for refining one's soul. Zichun said, in that place, everyone's soul power will increase rapidly. I discovered the passageway, so I came out first. Although the others came out later, it was only a matter of time. I won't hide it from everyone here, because it won't be long before you hear the news. That is the Lord of the Sacred Talisman Palace, who has always been in that world. And this time, if there are no accidents, the Lord of the Sacred Talisman Palace will also come out. What? The shock this news brought to everyone was not small. Back then, the Sacred Talisman Palace was definitely the top power of the Holy Thunder Clan. However, with the sudden disappearance of the palace master and the hasty resignation of the deputy palace master, the sacred talisman palace suffered a great loss. Thus, the Leijing family, who had a holy venerable, took advantage of the situation and gradually grew stronger. If the palace master returned this time, it would be extremely shocking news to all the forces. This could possibly mean that the sacred talisman palace would grow stronger again. That's all I have to say. As for the rest, you can ask your clansmen when they return. Zichen said, "Oh, I forgot to say. Every one of them has gained a lot, even more than you can imagine. And this time, I came back to find a way to open a stable passageway to the sacred talisman realm. At the same time, I want to make this passageway accessible to everyone." With that, Zichen left. He did not look at the reactions of the others, because there was no need to. Not long after, the others would return, and they would naturally know the true value of that world. If he could really open that passageway, then the Tianwu world would have an endless stream of wealth in the future. At the same time, it would be able to nurture an endless stream of experts. After Zichen left, Jolena stood up and looked at the representatives of the various clans. She said apologetically, "Everyone, I'm really sorry. Because the Tianwu continent needs to discuss the future development of the Tianwu continent, we need to use this conference hall for the discussion." Clearly, she was asking them to leave. In fact, these people were also preparing to leave. They needed to bring back the latest news as soon as possible. Moreover, this news was enough to shock everyone. Next, Jolena gathered her subordinates to prepare for the revival of the Tianwu continent. At the same time, she also had a new plan for the re-establishment of the various powers. If everything really went according to what Zichen said, and the passageway to the sacred talisman realm could be opened, then the Tianwu continent would definitely be a prosperous place in the future. 10 times the entrance fee was actually not much at all. In fact, it was cheaper. Of course, all of this was built on the premise that Zichen could succeed. Zichen returned to his residence. The following matters would be left to Jolena. He would not interfere, nor would he care. In this aspect, Jolena was much better than Zichen. After returning to his room, Zichen began to count his gains. To be honest, he did not gain much. Other than the staff and shield, he only obtained the set of spears and shields. Something was wrong. All of a sudden, Zichen's eyes widened. Because other than his own weapons, he still had many spoils of war on him. And these spoils of war were things that Zichen did not care about at all. But it was different now. After returning to the Saint Spirit world, these soul weapons were rare treasures. Each of them could be sold for a sky-high price. A light flashed in front of Zichen. A soul weapon appeared. The light wasn't dazzling, but at this moment, it was extremely attractive. It seems like the greatest wealth in this trip to the sacred talisman realm is actually these soul weapons. Zichen sighed. This was too surprising. It seems like there's a need to show them. With these soul weapons, the future development of the world will be much smoother. Zichen decided to take out these soul weapons and let Jolena deal with them. He believed that after seeing these soul weapons, their desire to stay in the Tianwu continent would be even stronger. Other than the physical soul weapons, Zichen also obtained a few types of sacred talisman arts and soul techniques. Previously, he tried it out. He could still use combat techniques, but they were not activated with physical strength. Instead, they were activated with soul power. In the Saint Spirit world, soul power was generally weaker. With Zichen's attainments in soul power, he could already sweep through many people. With a flash of light, Zichen's figure disappeared. He returned to his soul palace. Ever since he entered the sacred talisman realm, his soul palace seemed to have been sealed. After returning, everything returned to normal. The soul power in his soul palace was extremely dense. Right now, Zichen needed to increase his soul power. To him, this place was a treasure trove. Sitting down cross-legged, Zichen circulated his cultivation technique. The soul power in the surroundings flowed towards Zichen's sea of consciousness. Chapter 4075. The soul power in the soul palace was very rich and extremely pure. Zichen's soul power was obviously growing, and there were no bottlenecks to speak of. At this rate, the time for him to break through was just around the corner. The pure soul power was rapidly flowing away, and not long after, the concentration of soul power in the room decreased by a lot. Zichun stopped the cultivation technique and stood up. He was very satisfied with the speed of improvement. It seemed that in that world, it wasn't as simple as just traveling around. He had truly obtained great benefits. If everything went according to plan, he should be able to reach the 8-star Sacred Talisman Master in one fell swoop. This was an 8-star Sacred Talisman Master, not an 8-star Sacred Spirit. The two were not on the same level at all. Zichun prepared to leave the Soul Palace. At this moment, a ray of light suddenly appeared. It was the Spirit Bamboo Fairy. After the fairy appeared, she looked around curiously, and at the same time, she was also full of enthusiasm for everything here. Zichun recognized that gaze. It was envy. What do you want to do? Zichun was a little vigilant. Sure enough, the little fairy expressed its desire to devour this soul palace. Her appetite was a little too big. No. Zichun refused without thinking. This soul palace was priceless. How could it be destroyed and devoured just like that? One had to know that Zichun himself was reluctant to refine this place. Otherwise, he wouldn't have planned to leave and come in when his soul power was abundant again. If he refined it now, it would undoubtedly be killing the goose that laid the golden eggs. Who knew that just as the fairy expressed her desire, the spirit robe also had an abnormality. When Zichun devoured the soul power previously, a part of it was swallowed by the spirit robe. He didn't expect that not only was the spirit robe not satisfied, but it also wanted to devour it like the fairy. Zichun left without hesitation. This was simply impossible. Don't even think about it. After leaving the room, he went to find Jolina. It was already 3 days later. He felt that he didn't devour for long in the Soul Palace. 3 whole days had passed. In these 3 days, the entire Holy Thunder clan had experienced quite a bit of turmoil. The biggest thing was Zichun's return, and the impending return of the others. This was a good thing. All the rumors that were unfavorable to Zichun had dissipated. Zichun gave the spoils of war to Jolina, letting her deal with them as she saw fit. Jolina told Zichun everything that had happened in the past 3 days. Some aristocratic families had already decided to return to this place, but she hadn't agreed yet. It's up to you. I still have to go out for a while. Zichun said, it should be quite a while. Are you going to participate in the 4 Sacred Tribes Alliance? Jolina asked. You already know? Zichun was a little surprised. The news has already spread. Someone once made an article about it, saying that it was because of you that the Holy Thunder clan was humiliated and looked down upon by the other 3 clans. But since you've returned, we naturally have to bring this matter up. Jolina said, furthermore, only by creating momentum can the Sky Martial Continent return to its original peak at the fastest speed. Oh right, someone from the core city is looking for you. Just as Jolina was speaking, that person had already arrived. It was Lei Wuxing from the core city. Why are you here? Seeing the other party appear, Zichun was a little surprised. Lei Wuxing said, you're really something. 1 immortal stone per person. It doesn't matter what realm it is, it's a fair trade. He was obviously talking about the teleportation fee. Those guards didn't take extra care of him just because he was Zichun's friend. Lei Wuxing just teased him. I'm here to tell you a piece of good news. After the inspection by the higher-ups, you've officially passed the test. So I'm here to inform you that you'll have to go to the core city to accept your identity in 2 days. Oh. Zichun nodded, slightly surprised. Compared to Zichun's calmness, Jolina, who was beside him, was very happy. The identity of a core city far surpassed that of a core disciple. In the entire Holy Thunder clan, there might not even be one in many years. Moreover, this kind of test took a long time, and there was a possibility of failure at any time. But once one succeeded, their position in the Holy Thunder clan would definitely rise. Just this identity of a core city was enough for Zichun to hold up his own sky in the Holy Thunder clan. Let's go for a drink? Zichun suggested. Sure. Lei Wuxing smiled. Let's go together. Zichun looked at Jolina. You guys go ahead. I still have other things to do. Jolina refused, because the matter of Zichun becoming a core city could once again become a hot topic of discussion. When other forces were evaluating Zichun, this would naturally be a key point. At this moment, she was thinking about how to make use of Zichen's fame to maximize the benefits of the Sky Martial continent. However, Jolena did not deliberately publicize this matter, because becoming a core city was truly a big matter. Therefore, all the forces and families of the Holy Thunder clan were paying attention, and it could even be said that other clans were paying attention as well. Therefore, there was no need to deliberately publicize it. Just as the two of them sat at the table, another person came. It was Lei Wuxing's sister, Lei Wuxing's sister. She came straight to them, and before Zicheng could ask, she said in dissatisfaction, "This lady came to see you out of goodwill and congratulated you. You actually dare to charge this lady a teleportation fee. Little boy, bring the wine, the best wine. Keep bringing it, don't stop." Zichen rubbed his nose and said awkwardly, "Why don't I help you get it back later?" Lei Wuxing said in disdain, "Good for you. Can you be more fake? Why don't you give it back to me now?" Lei Wuxing sat beside Zichen without any courtesy, opposite Lei Wuxing. At this moment, another person appeared at the entrance of the tavern, and it was a beautiful woman. She wore an apricot yellow dress and walked over with a smile. It was Grace, who was supposed to be busy. "Why are you free today?" Zichen asked. "Isn't it all because of you?" Grace sat down with a smile. "After you came back, my work immediately became idle. Moreover, there's no need for me to say much. Today, the people above have already started to calculate all the immortal domain resources owed to the Sky Martial continent. Right now, I'm on vacation, so I came to take a look. Why, am I not welcome?" "Welcome? Of course you're welcome," Zichen hurriedly said. Lei Wuxing said in a strange tone, "How can he not welcome us? We came to see him, but what about the income of his world?" As the manager of the Thunder Imperial Office, Grace had interacted with the core of the sect before, and was familiar with the brother and sister in front of her. "What do you mean?" Grace did not understand. "When you came, no one asked you for the teleportation fee?" Lei Wuxing asked. "No. Isn't it always free?" Grace asked curiously. Lei Wuxing was a little sad. "Give me 2 jars of wine alone." Grace used to come to the Sky Martial continent often, so the guards knew her and knew her identity, so they let her go this time. This was just a small interlude to provoke Zichen. It was rare for everyone to have time to gather here today, and it was also rare for Zichen to relax. He called Lei Lan over, and the few of them drank to their heart's content. The teleportation fee did not change, but the number of people coming to the Sky Martial continent had obviously increased. Most of them were powerhouses. They had received the news early on, and were already preparing to cooperate with the Sky Martial continent. Obviously, after Zichen's return, his position in the Holy Thunder clan would change drastically. 2 days later, Zichen returned to the core city, and went to accept the fate of the core of the sect. This time, only Zichen accepted the fate, but the scale was still very big. The birth of a core of the sect meant that the Holy Thunder clan had another talent that could be nurtured, and it was the power of the Holy Thunder clan. The core of the sect did not belong to any individual or powerhouse, but only the Holy Thunder clan. The city lord of the core city was already there, and so was the commander. The higher-ups of the Thunder Imperial Office had also arrived, and many people who were qualified to be here were all present. Regarding Zichen's acceptance of the fate, the Holy Thunder clan actually had many intense discussions. Some people felt that Zichen was not qualified enough, and his assessment was not strict enough. Although Zichen's battle power was strong, and his reputation was not small, but his fame was almost all because he stepped on many inner disciples of the Holy Thunder clan. He did not have any achievements to the outside world, but when it came to internal matters, his deeds were unparalleled. Ever since he came to the Holy Thunder clan, he did not know how many times he had targeted his own people, and there was a huge problem with loyalty. And the most important thing to become a core of the sect was loyalty. This kind of quarrel started on the day Zichen returned, and continued for a few days. Under normal circumstances, the quarrel would continue for 10 days, 100 days, a year, or even 10 years, 100 years. Because there was always a dispute, it was natural that the quarrel would not end. But what everyone did not expect was that the real big shot of the Thunder clan, Lei Zhenke, suddenly said that Zichen already had the qualifications to become a core of the sect. With that one sentence, all the quarrels disappeared. And today, Lei Zhenke also appeared. As the undisputed #1 person of the Holy Thunder Clan, it had become a tradition for him to appear at the core of the sect's ceremony. According to Lei Zhenke's words, maybe after many years, there would be a #1 person. Lei Zhenke sat on the main seat, and on his two sides, there were usually a few big shots of the core city sitting there. But it was different today. Those big shots all moved to the sides, leaving the few seats in the middle empty. Even the Sacred Talisman Palace's Vice Palace Master's seat was slightly to the side. Just as many people were guessing who those seats were left for, a person appeared. It was Lady Saint. Lei Lan was following behind him. Lei Lan had stayed in the Sky Martial continent for a long time, but who would have thought that he would come here with Lady Saint? Everyone was enlightened. No wonder those big shots all went to the sides. So there was a saint. But there were still 2 empty seats. Who were they? Zichun, well done. Old ancestor admires you. Right at this moment, an immature voice that pretended to be mature sounded. Just by hearing the voice, one could tell who it was. Because of the appearance of Lady Saint, everyone who had fallen to the ground stood up again. Another saint appeared, and there were 2 of them. Chapter 4076. Except for the Saint Venerables, everyone stood up and bowed respectfully to the 2 Saint Venerables who had arrived. They were the spiritual and pulse patriarchs. Lei Di and Lei Zhenke did not stand up, but nodded at the 2. The pulse patriarch approached them. He had not grown taller for many years. He jumped up and patted Zichun on the shoulder. Well done. Our Holy Thunder Clan needs people like you. If you can't become a core disciple, who can? Zichun's acceptance of his fate was accompanied by 4 Saint Venerables. This was not a small scene. When many people looked at Zichun again, their eyes were filled with other emotions. The 2 Saint Venerables took their seats, and the ceremony began. The first ceremony was a tedious ceremony, such as pledging allegiance, which lasted for half an hour. After the ceremony, it was the acceptance of fate, during which they talked about the benefits and authority for a quarter of an hour. Lei Zhenke stood up, holding a token in his hand, which was unique to the core disciple and represented great authority. Every time the core disciple accepted their fate, Lei Zhenke would personally give out the token. It was said that the resources consumed to make this token were unique to the Holy Thunder Clan, and the forging skills were the same. The cost was 100 times more than the cost of a core disciple's token. Zichun received the token with both hands. Everyone stood up and applauded, which meant that the ceremony was over. At this moment, the Pulse Patriarch's voice sounded. Wait, there's a gift. The 2 spiritual Pulse Patriarchs formed a seal at the same time, and a ripple channel opened between them. A dark green branch appeared from the ripples. On the branch, there was a dazzling golden fruit. No one could recognize what the fruit was, but they knew very well who had given it. The fruit fell off by itself, turned into a golden light, and disappeared into Zichun's sea of consciousness. Zichun did not seem to have changed. However, everyone knew that Zichun had gained great benefits, but he did not show it in front of others. Many people had envious looks in their eyes. After the ceremony, Lei Zhenke left. Lady came to Zichun and said, "Not bad." Zichun smiled and nodded. Lady continued, "But we can't make any mistakes in the next step. The Holy Thunder Clan can't lose the limelight in this gathering of the 4 clans." Zichun nodded again. The smile on his face was gone, replaced by a serious expression. Lady also left. Relatively speaking, Zichun was more familiar with the other party. The 2 of them were fated to meet because of the last beating. Good luck, young man. The Saint Venerables left one after another, and the others came forward to give their blessings. From today onwards, Zichun had a pivotal position in the Holy Thunder Clan. He was no longer an existence that could be targeted and manipulated by just anyone. Lei Yu immediately expressed his goodwill. Not only did he replenish all of Zichun's resources, but he also dealt with a portion of his people. Although it couldn't be compared to the previous purge, it could be considered as eliminating dissidents. In the future, Grace's path of promotion would be smoother. Zichun and Fu Lao had a second conversation to discuss the follow-up matters. For example, how to make the Holy Thunder Clan accept this great favor, to have more incense with those who came out, as well as the following invitations. Naturally, Zichun couldn't go alone. Fu Lao would assign some people to him, but the number was not large. This was because Zichun had returned and brought back some good news. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for Fu Lao to recruit these people. Without a holy master, the sacred talisman palace was suppressed everywhere. However, Zichun believed that this situation would change soon, because the returning palace master was a genuine holy master. Officially becoming the core of the city, Zichun's treatment in the core city had improved significantly. Lei Yu had arranged everything for him, and the next step was to wait for Zichun to go and claim it. Among these, the most significant thing was that he had his own independent residence, which was opened up outside the core city. It was exclusive to the core of the core city. In the core city, Zichun celebrated with his friends, and then returned to the Tianwu continent. The cities of this continent were completely managed by Jolina, and all the ancient trees outside the tree city were developed by the tree spirits. This time, Zichun brought the little fairy from the world. Next, he needed the little fairy to stay in this world. Coming to the sky above the wilderness, Zichun looked at the dense ancient trees below. These ancient trees usually looked normal, but once there was an invasion, they would become warriors. Zichun was thinking about where to put the little fairy. With a flash of brilliance, the little fairy appeared. She looked down, and there was a look of surprise in her eyes. I didn't expect you to have such a thing. All the trees seem to be alone, but they are closely connected. It's really amazing. The little fairy clicked her tongue in wonder, but then she changed the topic. If I go down and open up my own bamboo forest, then the layout of this place will be destroyed. At that time, these trees can only be alone, and there will be no connection between them. This was also what Zichun was most worried about. If he put the little fairy in this world, it would destroy the foundation of this world. Do you have any ideas? Zichun looked at the little fairy. It didn't seem to be worried about his current situation, and her words were still very relaxed. It's very simple. Just open up a world within a world, the little fairy said casually. How do I open it? Zichun was startled. He didn't know how to do that. Give me the spirit palace. I will help you open it, the little fairy said again. Don't even think about it. After talking for so long, it turned out that she was still thinking about the spirit palace, which was obviously impossible. The value of a spirit palace was too high, so high that it couldn't be described. How could Zichun waste it? If it stays with you, the spirit palace will only be a place for cultivation, only for you to cultivate. But if it is in my hands, it can become a world. The concentration of soul power may not be comparable to the spirit palace, but it can provide for countless people to cultivate. The little fairy said, which method is more beneficial? Think about it carefully. Zichun shook his head again and said in a tone that couldn't be refused, impossible. The spirit palace will definitely not be given to you. The little fairy said again, don't think that I am seizing the opportunity to extort you. Opening up a world within a world with only soul power requires far more resources than you can imagine. With the help of the spirit palace, it can be done in just a few decades. But without the spirit palace, with my own strength, it would be very fast to succeed in a few thousand years. Zichun shook his head again and said, you don't have to think about the spirit palace. I will not give it to you. The little fairy was clearly unwilling and continued, actually, you don't need the entire spirit palace, just a third of it should be enough. Chapter 4077. Zichun's heart wavered. It didn't mean that he was willing to take out the soul palace, but he felt that he could replace it with other resources if he only needed 1/3 of it. Zichun also asked for 1/3 of the soul-gathering crystal mine in addition to the soul palace. He could give it to Little Fairy now. At the same time, he also got a lot of immortal stones that he could use. He also had a lot of blue crystal coins from the Holy Talisman realm. He exchanged a lot with the Golden Scale clan before he left. This kind of thing couldn't be rushed. Zichun gave up on the idea of arranging Little Fairy and decided to wait. Or rather, wait until the end of the gathering. The Holy Thunder clan was in turmoil. Every force had their own plans. Zichun, who was at the center of the storm, left with his team. He led 13 5-star Holy Talisman Masters to the location of the gathering. The location of the gathering was in the hands of someone called Lei Ming. He was only 1 step away from a 6-star Holy Talisman Master. If Zichun didn't come out, he would be the one leading the team. The gathering of the four clans, whether there was anyone or not, everyone had to participate. Now that Zichun was back, although there weren't many people on the Holy Thunder Clan side, everyone had some confidence. They had heard of Zichun's glorious deeds. Moreover, it was no longer a secret that Zichun had become the core of the clan. Following such a powerhouse, they were naturally very confident. After teleporting again and again, everyone entered the aircraft after leaving the Holy Thunder Clan and began their long journey. Zichun still remembered the scene when he came out last time. Back then, Leyland's mission failed and Zichun went to rescue him. In the end, a series of things happened. He looked up at the sky and thought of a certain place in his mind. If it wasn't for the people there who came to his rescue, he would have died in the hands of others. The funny thing was that that person was also a member of the Holy Thunder Clan. Sir, this time we will last for about half a month. Lei Ming looked at Zichun and said. Lei Ming's words pulled Zichun back from his thoughts. Got it. Just lead the way. All right. Zichun did not interact much with the others along the way. He spent most of his time cultivating. When the others saw Zichun's encouragement, they were too embarrassed to refuse. Therefore, they all worked hard to cultivate. Zichun was refining the soul fruit. It was the one given to him by the lightning ancestor sacred tree. He didn't know what it was called, but the soul power it contained was something he had never seen before. During this period of time, as long as he had the time, he would refine the soul power. 7 days later, they passed by a galaxy and rested there for a short while. In a restaurant, they heard a discussion about the gathering. I heard that the 4 sacred clans are gathering this time because they discovered a lost world. However, that place is too dangerous, and none of the forces can bear the losses. Therefore, they decided to form an alliance. I heard that there are dangers, but the main reason is to recoup the losses from the Immortal region. During the last trip to the Immortal region, the Holy Thunder Clan dominated and became the final winner. The other forces were unwilling to accept this, so they decided to form this gathering. Then the Holy Thunder Clan is out of luck this time. I heard that their sacred talisman master was killed by Zichun. The Holy Thunder Clan has no one to send now. There were many people discussing the fate of Zichun and the Holy Thunder Clan in the future. However, there were very few people talking about the lost world. When the others who were sitting heard the discussion, their expressions turned ugly. As the representatives of the Holy Thunder Clan, which one of them was not a noble existence in the clan? When had they ever been humiliated like this? Moreover, these people were only qualified to discuss here. Once they revealed their identities, they would probably be scared to death. You all go back first, Zichun said indifferently as he glanced at the enraged people. No one dared to disobey Zichun's orders. Therefore, they stood up one by one and planned to leave. At this moment, a sarcastic voice sounded. You all have guts. Can't you see that the Holy Thunder Clan that you all are talking about is here? Why? Aren't you all afraid of death? This voice sounded very suddenly, and the surroundings instantly became silent. The few people who stood up were especially abrupt at this moment. Zichun waved his hand and motioned for them to continue. Why? I heard that the Holy Thunder Clan has a bad temper. Shouldn't you stand up for your clan when you hear someone badmouth your clan? Or is what they said true? Are you all too ashamed to stay here and want to run away? That voice sounded again. It came from a man at the next table, and he had a mocking look on his face. You're courting death. The Holy Thunder Clan members who wanted to leave turned around and glared at the other party. The power of the Holy Thunder began to circulate. Oh, are you angry because I hit the nail on the head? The man sneered. Die. Murderous intent appeared in their eyes. The powerful power of the Holy Thunder surged out, and a tyrannical pressure appeared in the tavern out of nowhere. The diners retreated in horror. Some of them were even more afraid that a fight would break out, so they fled at the first moment. Seeing this, the others fled one after another. In the blink of an eye, there were only 2 groups of people left. One was Zichun's people, and the other was that man. There were a total of 5 of them, and one of them was a woman. The woman said, Cui Chung, don't be rude. The man named Cui Chung smiled. I'm not being rude. I'm just speaking the truth. It's just that people nowadays can't tell the good from the bad. They can't listen to the truth. My subordinates are talkative. Everyone, please don't mind them. We mean no harm. The woman stood up and said to the people of the Holy Thunder Clan, while looking at Zichun, "Let's go." Zichun stood up and walked outside. The man named Chui Cheng seemed to want to say something, but he was stopped by the woman with a look. When they walked out of the door, there were already many onlookers gathered here. They thought that a fight would break out. Now it seemed that they thought too much. The two sides didn't fight. Seeing the people of the Holy Thunder Clan leave, Chui Cheng said discontentedly, "Miss, why didn't you do anything?" The woman said, "It seems that the unknown information was right. Zichun is really back." Zichun? That guy who has been dead for hundreds of years? Chui Cheng was stunned for a moment before reacting. Could it be that the young leader from before is that killer Zichun? Zichun was very famous, and his fame was earned through fighting. Too many enemies died in his hands. That was why he was called the Killing Star. "Sir, why didn't we teach them a lesson?" After leaving the city and returning to the aircraft, Lei Meng said unwillingly, "Teach them a lesson?" A meaningful smile appeared at the corner of Zichen's mouth. "If we really fight, we don't know who will kill who." "What do you mean?" "They were obviously waiting for us this time. They even set up a killing trap, but for some reason, they suddenly gave up." Chapter 4078. Zichun sat cross-legged. He had just left the Holy Thunder Clan for a few days and had not even reached his destination before encountering danger. However, he didn't have the slightest clue about where the enemy came from. Was it against him? Or the Holy Thunder Clan? "My lord, there is a flying boat behind us. It has been following us for a long time." A voice came from the front. It was the Saint Talisman Master who was driving the flying boat. Zichun closed his eyes and said, "Ignore it. Let's continue on our way." Lei Ming opened his mouth as if to say something, but in the end, he did not speak. It seemed that this Lord Zichun was seriously inconsistent with the rumored killing star. The other party was deliberately provoking him, but Zichun was indifferent. As members of the Holy Thunder Clan, when had they ever been humiliated like this? Where was the dignity of the Holy Thunder Clan? "My lord, they are coming. There are a total of 5 boats, and they are moving around us." The voice came from the front again. The surrounding temperature was dropping. Many people felt angry. This was an obvious provocation. The Holy Thunder Clan was a top force in the Saint Spirit realm. Who would dare to act so brazenly? "My lord!" Someone shouted. "My lord!" Lei Ming also cupped his fists at Zichun. Zichun opened his eyes and glanced at the crowd. He could feel their anger. To them, the dignity of the Holy Thunder Clan was above everything. He glanced outside. There were indeed several flying boats circling around, full of provocation. Courting death? Zichun's eyes flashed coldly, and his indifferent voice came out. A real sound wave spread out in all directions, enough for everyone to hear it clearly. "My lord, you have such a big temper. We just came to pay you a visit. How is it courting death?" A clear and melodious laughter rang out. Zichun recognized where the voice came from. It was the woman in the restaurant. All the flying boats moved forward in the same trajectory, maintaining the same speed. They were no longer provoking him. Zichun waved his hand to signal the flying boats to stop. The other flying boats also stopped. A woman walked out of the flying boat. She was the one he had seen before. She was the only one. She flew over to the airship where Zichun was. "My name is Chui Jing. I'm here to see you." The others looked at Zichun, and Zichun nodded. The flying boat opened, and the woman walked in alone. She looked at the vigilant crowd and said, "What's the matter? Are the dignified sacred talisman masters of the Holy Thunder Clan worried about a little girl like me?" Lei Ming snorted and signaled the others to disperse. Zichun looked at the woman. "Why are you looking for me? May I ask if Sir is Zichun of the Holy Thunder Clan?" Chui Jing looked at Zichun with eyes full of worship. Zichun nodded. "That's right. It's me. I knew you wouldn't die. My name is Chui Jing, and I'm from the Wulua Starfield. I've always been worshipped by Sir. I was sad for a long time when I heard that something happened to Sir, but I always believed that Sir would be fine. I didn't expect to see Sir today." Chui Jing said excitedly, "Sir, are you leading a team to the moon planet?" Zichun was surprised by Chui Jing's words. "That's right. Then can we go together?" Cui Jing looked at Zichen hopefully. Zichen looked at the others. They thought they had met an enemy, but they didn't expect it to be an admirer of Zichen. At this moment, when Zichen looked at them, they all turned their heads away. Obviously, they wouldn't give any opinions. All right, Zichen nodded. Great. Everyone can go now. I'll go with Sir Zichen. Cui Jing's voice sounded. But, Mississippi, Cui Cheng's voice sounded. Sir Zichen is here. I believe in Sir's character. Cui Jing's words didn't allow for refusal. Cui Cheng didn't say anything, and the airship started to move. Zichen sat cross-legged and began to cultivate. Cui Jing was left hanging there. The others pretended not to see and turned their heads to do their own things. Cui Jing stomped her foot. Sir, are you going to leave me hanging like this? Zichen opened his eyes and looked at her in confusion. Cui Jing said angrily, Sir, you should at least talk to me. What's the point of leaving a little girl like me here? Zichen looked at her and said, Do you want a drink? There were 2 jugs of wine in front of him. Let's drink mine. I guarantee it's better than yours. Cui Jing also took out 2 jugs of wine and showed off. The packaging was obviously better than Zichen's. All right. Zichen didn't refuse. He took a jug and opened it. Cui Jing also sat across Zichen, and the 2 of them drank together. After the others looked at each other, they tactfully left the airship. One of the Saint Talisman Masters took out a new airship and everyone walked in. After everyone left, Zichen looked at Cui Jing and said, Have we met before? Cui Jing shook her head. Zichen asked again, Then is there a grudge between us? Cui Jing continued to shake her head and asked doubtfully, Sir, why do you ask? Zichen said, When we were in the restaurant earlier, I sensed your killing intent. Cui Jing laughed. So it's about that. Actually, there is no grudge between us. It's just that your arrival earlier scared away our target. Cui Cheng was angry, so he said a few words. Oh? Zichen looked at Cui Jing. We had already set up a trap and were waiting for the target to appear. But we didn't expect the Holy Thunder Clan to come. Cui Jing said, But I suspect that he left because he saw my lord appear. He knows me? Maybe he saw Sir's portrait. After all, back then, Sir was very famous. After finishing the jug of wine, Zichen continued to cultivate. Cui Jing looked at Zichen, who was close at hand, and her eyes flashed. There was a helpless look in her eyes. No one came to disturb them for the rest of the journey. The journey was very peaceful. Zichen occasionally woke up and chatted with Cui Jing for a while, but most of the time, he was silent. During this time, Zichen asked Cui Jing if she wanted to return to her airship, but she rejected him. Cui Jing also asked Zichen about what happened in the Saint Talisman realm. Zichen chose some insignificant things to talk about. A few days later, the airship arrived at its destination, Moonstar. It was a star field controlled by the Saint Moon clan. It was said to be a temporary stronghold. Whether it was the 4 Saint clans or other powerful clans, they all had similar places outside. When Zichen arrived, it was already very lively. Saint Talisman Masters from various forces had gathered. Rather than calling it a gathering of the 4 Saint clans, it was better to call it a huge gathering of Saint Talisman Masters. The Holy Thunder Clan was not the only one invited. Many other forces were also invited. It could be said that as long as one had the strength and qualifications, they could come here. When the Holy Thunder Clan's airship arrived, someone naturally came to receive them personally. Chapter 4079. The people of the Holy Thunder Clan had arrived, and many people cast strange gazes at them. Because there were too few people here, whispers could be heard. Cui Jing had separated from Zichen and met up with her people. At the same time, she deliberately kept a distance from the Holy Thunder Clan. I am Yu Buhuai of the Holy Moon Clan. Welcome, friends of the Holy Thunder Clan. May I know who the Holy Thunder Clan sent to take charge this time? A young Holy Talisman Master came forward and swept his gaze over Zichen and the others. Although he greeted them with a smile, it was obvious that he was ignoring them. There were many people around, and at this moment, they were all looking over with ridicule. Among them, there seemed to be some familiar faces. Were they the ones who had suffered in the immortal region? It had been too long, and Zichen couldn't remember clearly. However, Although all the major forces had gained something from the trip to the Immortal Region, it was nothing compared to the Holy Thunder Clan. The Holy Thunder Clan had obtained such a huge benefit, but the Holy Thunder Clan didn't say anything afterward. Naturally, the various forces found it difficult to let it go. If they could see the Holy Thunder Clan make a fool of themselves, they would naturally be happy. I am Zichun. I will be in charge of this gathering for the time being. Zichun stepped forward and said. The necessary response should still be given. As soon as these words came out, it caused quite an uproar. Zichun's name had long spread, but not many people had seen Zichun before. In recent years, there had been a lot of negative news about Zichun and the Holy Thunder Clan. Now that they saw Zichun with their own eyes, many people were extremely surprised. You are Zichun? There was a touch of surprise in Yu Buhuai's eyes. He immediately cupped his fists and said, Excuse me. I have long heard that Zichun's combat strength is unparalleled, and you are a rare genius in the Holy Talisman Tao. It is rare to see you today. Do you want to show off your skills? There was a commotion all around. Zichun said, Show off my skills? Is this the rule of the gathering? Yu Buhuai said with a smile, Of course not. This gathering of the 4 holy clans is supposed to be a grand occasion. It's just that the members of the Holy Thunder Clan don't seem to care much about it. So many people actually came. Laughter came from all around. Clearly, many people understood why this was happening. They wanted to send someone, but there was no one left to send. Previously, our 3 races had already agreed that if you don't care about this grand event, then there's no need to share the good locations and information. The smile on Yu Buhuai's face didn't diminish as he continued. But since you're here, Zichun, we have to give you face. Furthermore, you represent the Holy Thunder Clan. It's not good to follow behind others and eat leftovers. Therefore, Brother Zichun, you only need to show a few moves to prove that you have the strength and that the Holy Thunder Clan still has the qualifications to enjoy the first echelon even though there are only a few of them here. Clearly, he was being targeted. Moreover, they were being targeted by their former allies. The expressions of the people who came with Zichun became unnatural, and there was anger on their faces. Miss, do you see? The Holy Thunder Clan is now a rat crossing the street. Everyone wants to beat them up. Cui Cheng stood behind Cui Jing and said in a low voice, Even their allies are targeting them. This time, not to mention returning empty-handed, they might even be completely wiped out. Cui Jing said, Let's just watch. At this moment, everyone was looking at Zichun, waiting for his reply. Under everyone's gaze, Zichun nodded and said, What you said seems to make some sense. However, it's a bit perfunctory for me to mess around here alone. Moreover, I don't have a clear conscience about this quota. How about you and I exchange pointers on the spot? The smile on Yu Buhuai's face froze. Zichun looked around and said to the onlookers, Let's exchange pointers as friends. It just so happens that everyone can judge whether our Holy Thunder Clan is qualified or not. Okay? Okay. Naturally, there were people who cheered loudly. Naturally, everyone wanted to see the confrontation between the geniuses of the Holy Thunder Clan and the Holy Moon Clan. There was a lot of applause. Yu Buhuai didn't expect Zichun to play such a trick. It seemed that this smiling guy was also a sinister villain. Of course, he couldn't agree. His purpose was to make a fool of Zichun, not to see him make a fool of himself. He laughed and said, Brother Zichun, you must be joking. This is a qualification battle. Our Holy Moon Clan is not in this range. Brother Zichun, if you really want a challenge, you can choose from the others. Zichun shook his head and said, There's no point in exchanging pointers with others. I think Brother Buhuai is a good candidate. It's just a small gesture. Since everyone is so enthusiastic, I'm sure that Brother Buhuai, as the host, will give everyone this little bit of face. Fight! 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 In the crowd, there were people who cheered loudly. Obviously, there were people who didn't mind watching the fun. At this moment, Yu Buhuai felt a bit like a duck being driven onto a perch, and his expression was a little awkward. It's just a joke. Brother Zichun, don't take it seriously. Suddenly, there was a faint laugh, and a young man in a moon robe came over. Before coming, Junior Sister Yu specially instructed me to say hello to Brother Zichun on her behalf when I see you. Now, I've brought this kindness with me. It was just a little joke before, and I hope Brother Zichen doesn't mind. The Holy Thunder Clan and the Holy Moon Clan have been on good terms for thousands of years. I believe the Holy Thunder Clan will never neglect this matter. There should be some other reason for so few people to come. The first echelon's position has already been arranged for everyone. Come with me. In a few short sentences, not only did he mention Shangguan but he also deliberately pointed out the Holy Thunder Clan's current situation of having no one to send, and mentioned the alliance and friendship between the two clans. At the same time, he also resolved Yu Buhuai's awkwardness. Zichen glanced at the other party and said, "So it was a joke. I'm sorry. It's just that your acting skills are too good. There were no flaws at all. If I had known earlier, I would have challenged all of you from the Holy Moon Clan. Anyway, on account of my relationship with you, and the alliance between our clans, you wouldn't have made things difficult for me." "Oh, how should I address you?" One person challenging an entire clan. This counterattack was sharp, even if it was said in a joking manner. The young man cupped his fists and said, "I'm Yu Butian." Zichen frowned slightly. "Why, is there a problem with this name?" Yu Butian asked. Zichen immediately shook his head and said, "Oh, no. It's just that I'm a little sensitive to the word Tian. You also know that our Holy Thunder Clan has an idiot named Leijing Hongtian. He participated in the core assessment for many years, but in the end, he didn't pass. It's fine that he was stupid, but he even dared to scheme against me and was beaten into a pig's head by me. All these years, I felt very guilty, and I always felt that I went a little too easy on him." Chapter 4080. Following Zichen's words, the originally noisy surroundings suddenly became quiet. Core Pinnacle. That was the highest level of genius in the Holy Thunder Clan. Once they passed the test and accepted their fate, they would receive the full nurturing of the Holy Thunder Clan. This meant an endless stream of resources and powerful connections. At least at this moment, there were not many who had the same status as Zichen. Furthermore, Zichen had the powerful Holy Thunder Clan behind him. Although everyone had been waiting to see the Holy Thunder Clan make a fool of themselves, that was only because of Yu Buhuai. There was no one who dared to challenge the Holy Thunder Clan yet. Otherwise, why did the Holy Thunder Clan get the huge benefits from the previous trip to the Immortal Region? Why didn't the other factions fight for it if they had complaints? Naturally, it was because of the Holy Thunder Clan's strength. Zichen deliberately pointed out his identity to save him a lot of trouble. I didn't expect him to become a core pinnacle. Even Cui Jing, who was traveling with Zichen, was surprised to hear this news for the first time. While everyone was surprised, there was one person in the crowd who was very dissatisfied. That was Leijing Hongtian. Zichen deliberately pointed out his name to humiliate him. Ever since he failed the pinnacle test, his resources and connections in the Holy Thunder Clan had been greatly reduced. The clan's nurturing of him had also been reduced to the level of an ordinary core disciple. Not only this loss, but in the previous purge, the Leijing family, which had the Holy Venerate overseeing it, had not suffered any losses. However, they had secretly suffered a lot of losses. Almost all the chess pieces they had nurtured had been wiped out in one fell swoop. Many of the Holy Thunder Clan's higher-ups had been dismissed. This damned guy. He's not willing to suffer any losses at any time. Beside him, Leijing Hongfang gritted his teeth and said, he had also come this time, but he had only come to relax. Yu Butian led Zichen forward. Along the way, no one dared to obstruct them. Yu Buhuai followed beside them silently. A small problem passed just like that. Brother Zichen, there are still some people who are not here yet. We have agreed to meet in 3 days. In these 3 days, Brother Zichen, you can walk around Moonstar. There are many interesting things here. As they walked, the two of them would chat for a while. They were not very familiar with each other, but there was no longer any hostility between them. Zichen suddenly stopped and turned to look in a certain direction. Just a moment ago, he felt a strong killing intent. This killing intent was very unfamiliar and made him feel uncomfortable. That was because this person's killing intent clearly surpassed Leijing Hongtian's. Zichen didn't believe that he had such an enemy. He had mentioned Leijing Hongtian earlier because Zichen had seen him. Obviously, If the Holy Thunder Clan failed to send someone over, the Leijing family would represent the Holy Thunder Clan. This was also why the Leijing family had interfered with the Sacred Runes Palace. The Holy Thunder Clan's interests? It didn't exist in front of the Leijing family. Everything was based on the Leijing family's interests. Zichun didn't have the power of a sacred venerate at the moment. If he did, the first person he wanted to kill would be that old thing Leijing. The Holy Moon Clan had arranged accommodations for the people who came to attend the gathering, but they were of different levels. Zichun and the others in the Holy Thunder Clan naturally received the best treatment. The Holy Thunder Clan's sacred rune masters who had come with Zichun were in a much better mood at the moment because the Holy Thunder Clan hadn't lost face. If you want to go out and have a look, you can go together. If you don't want to go out, then stay in your rooms. Before parting ways with the others, Zichun gave a few instructions. Everyone knew what was important and nodded to indicate that they would cultivate in their rooms. Although they represented the Holy Thunder Clan, to be honest, none of them were comparable to those big forces at such a gathering. After all, there were many 6-star Sacred Rune Masters who came this time, and 5-star Sacred Rune Masters like them were naturally nothing. In fact, they also knew that they were only here to make up the numbers. The only real main force was Zichun. In the evening, there was a knock on the door. Cui Jing, who had parted ways with Zichun during the day, came again. "Why are you here?" Zichun asked in surprise. Cui Jing looked around and smiled. "It seems that the place is indeed much better than where we are staying. The place is very big. You can stay here if you like," Zichun said. "Why didn't I see you so enthusiastic when we were on the flying boat?" Cui Jing looked at Zichun. "Do you know that you are isolated and helpless? So you want to pull me into your group?" Zichun didn't evade the question but said directly, "Since you have already seen that I am isolated and helpless, are you here to draw a line with me?" "It's not to the extent of drawing a line. There is no line between you and me. However, I am here today to provide you with some information for free." Cui Jing said mysteriously, "It's about the severed place?" "The severed place? Does that place really exist?" Zichun looked very surprised. "What else?" Cui Jing said, "Do you really think that the other Sacred Rune clans have nothing better to do and deliberately take advantage of the Holy Thunder Clan's weakness to make trouble for you and deliberately disgust you? Not only does that place exist, but it is also said to be very dangerous. Only Sacred Rune Masters who are far more powerful than ordinary Sacred Rune Masters can survive there. The purpose of this gathering is to attack the severed place." Cui Jing glanced around the room and then said carefully, "I have heard some inside information. In the severed place, there is a clan of lost immigrants. It is said that they were once members of the sacred spirit world. For some unknown reason, they entered the severed place and each of them has extraordinary combat strength." Zichun's heart trembled as he thought of the immortal clan in the immortal realm. It was said that many years ago, those people were also members of the Saint Spirit realm, but after entering the immortal realm, they called themselves immortals. After so many years, haven't the secrets of the sacred spirit world been discovered? Zichun asked doubtfully, "Why is there still an unknown severed place?" The sacred spirit world is very large, and many secrets of different sizes appear every year. It is impossible to uncover all of them, because some secrets will gradually appear with the passage of time, just like the immortal domain many years ago. And this severed place is the same. Cui Jing finally said, "If you seize the opportunity, I believe that your harvest this time will be great, or even greater than last time." Cui Jing left, as if she had only come here to remind Zichun. She had mentioned the severed place, but there were no more accurate clues, and Zichun did not know anyone else, so he could only wait. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed, and it was time for the various forces to discuss matters. Early in the morning, someone from the Sacred Moon Clan came to invite Zichun, but it was a discussion between the leaders, so no one else would go. When Zichun arrived, nearly half of the people in the large conference hall were already seated, and the number of people had exceeded 100. More people were arriving one after another. It seemed that this time, it was not only a gathering of the 4 sacred clans, but also a grand occasion for the sacred spirit world. And since the Sacred Moon Clan was willing to share this severed place, it seemed that the danger factor inside was not small. Zichun's seat was at the front, on the same level as the other 3 clans, followed by the Five Elements clan and the other tribes. The person presiding over this meeting was Yu Butian and Yu Buhuai, who had targeted Zichun last time, had a seat next to him. Zichen's gaze swept around, but he did not see Lei Zhenghongtian. He did not know if he had not come, or if he was deliberately avoiding suspicion. Sitting next to Zichun was someone from the Sacred Star clan, and the power of Xing Chan on him was extremely obvious. Behind him stood a young man. Occasionally, the young man would cast a cold gaze in his direction. Every time Zichun looked at him, the young man would turn his head away and avoid eye contact. After a cup of tea's time, the conference hall was full of people. Not only were there seats, but there was also standing space. Everyone, thank you for coming this time. Today's gathering will be arranged by Yu Butian. Yu Butian cupped his fists and bowed to everyone, receiving a round of applause. Actually, some news has already spread in private. Today, I will not keep you in suspense. That's right, we have indeed discovered an unknown severed place. This time, we have gathered everyone in the name of a gathering to discuss how to enter the severed place. This news was already semi-public, but after Yu Butian's confirmation and acknowledgement, it still caused a lot of discussion. Yu Butian gently raised his hand, and the discussion around them gradually disappeared. Everyone, that place is very dangerous. Given the power of the Sacred Moon Clan, even if we can conquer it, we will suffer heavy losses. Even if we join forces with the power of the four sacred clans, it is still a huge price that no one is willing to pay. Yu Butian's gaze swept across everyone and finally paused on Zichun. It is a place that is far more dangerous than the Immortal region. The original inhabitants of that place are the Severed Clan, who possess extremely great power. Everyone listened to Yu Butian's explanation and understood how powerful and terrifying the Severed Clan was. There was silence all around. Clearly, this was the first time this internal news had spread. This time, the Sacred Moon Clan is willing to share this place for free. After he said this, the surroundings were still silent. Everyone who had come here was a sacred spirit. Furthermore, they were the most powerful sacred symbol masters among the sacred spirits. Naturally, they were not people who had not seen the world. If such a good thing really existed, it would definitely not be their turn. However, the resources to enter will have to be paid by everyone. Yu Butian held a glowing crystal in his hand. This is something called the Severed Sky Crystal. If you want to enter the severed place, you can only rely on the transportation array built by it. The surroundings were still silent. Everyone was waiting for him to continue. Where can we find such a thing? Someone suddenly asked. It was unknown if it was someone Yu Butian had prepared in advance. At present, only the Sacred Moon Clan has it. However, after everyone enters, you can obtain it with your own strength. Yu Butian said, after entering the severed place, anything you obtain will belong to you. It has nothing to do with the Sacred Moon Clan. Even if you obtain a large number of severed sky crystals to sell, we will still not care. Many people's gazes changed. How much is it worth? The previous person asked again. 1 severed sky crystal, 10 immortal stones, Yu Butian said. P.S. More. Chapter 4081. In the Saint Spirit realm, there were originally no immortal stones. Since the immortal realm was discovered, immortal stones had become a kind of currency. Many people were moved by Yu Butian's price of 1 immortal stone for 10 immortal stones. This meant that the resources in the Lost World might be 10 times more than those in the immortal realm. Of course, it was also possible that the Holy Moon Clan had taken the opportunity to ask for an entrance fee. Naturally, no one had any objections, because even if they did, the Holy Moon Clan would definitely not listen. Moreover, for the various forces, these immortal stones could still be taken out. The amount was not considered a lot. Everyone, the lost heavenly crystals have been prepared for everyone. Later, everyone can determine the amount according to the people who came to exchange. At this point, the meeting was about to end. During this period, Yu Butian politely asked everyone if they had anything else to say. Everyone shook their heads. Zichun was not the first to walk out, but he was not the last either. When he left, the Five Elements clan and the other 3 clans were still inside. Zichen guessed that they should have excluded the Holy Thunder clan as they had important matters to discuss. Zichen. A voice came from behind. Zichen turned around and saw an unfamiliar man from the Holy Glory clan. My name is Yao Guan. The other party came closer and took the initiative to introduce himself. What's the matter? Zichen asked in surprise. According to his guess, the clans should be discussing the matter of entering the Lost World. You haven't come out of your room for the past few days. It's not easy to see you. Can I invite you for a drink today? Yao Guan said with a smile. Zichen nodded. The other party naturally had something to discuss. There's a restaurant not far away. I've eaten there once and the taste is very good. Yao Guan led the way for Zichen, and the two of them walked towards the tavern. Cui Jing stopped in her tracks. She had originally planned to look for Zichen. Along the way, many people cast strange glances at the two of them. At this time, everyone was thinking of going back to discuss the matter of entering the Lost World with their clans. None of them were in the mood for leisure. When they arrived at this tavern, Yao Guan asked for a private room. Obviously, it was not as simple as just drinking. After entering the room, Yao Guan ordered the dishes and wine. With a wave of his hand, a soundproof barrier appeared around him. Brother Zichen, do you know Dazzling? Yao Guan asked. She's my friend. We've gone through life and death together. How could we not know each other? Zichen asked in surprise. Why? Do you know Dazzling? Zichen was really surprised. When ladies sent everyone away, everyone's cultivation was very low, so they shouldn't have been remembered by a holy spirit of this level. But this time, when he came here, he first heard Yuer's name, and then he heard Brilliant. It seemed that they had grown very quickly these past few years. As for whether or not he was remembered because of his appearance, Zichen was not worried at all. This was because there were too many beautiful people in the Holy Spirit realm, and the ones who were remembered in the end were all extraordinary geniuses. When I was chatting with Dazzling, she talked about you and your various legends. To be able to reach this step today, you are really amazing. Yao Guan raised the bowl in his hand, which was already full of wine. How is she doing in Yaozu? Very good. She has good talent and is a good person. Everything is good. Speaking of Dazzling was just to get closer to the two of them. This time, Yao Guan called Zichen over to discuss something. What do you think about the trip to the Lost World? Yao Guan asked after drinking a bowl of wine. Zichen shook his head and said, apart from the danger, I don't have any other opinion. Aren't you surprised that the Holy Moon clan is so generous? Yao Guan asked again. I'm not surprised. What I'm surprised about is why you're drinking with me here instead of sitting with several forces to discuss. Zichen poured himself a full glass of wine. Yao Guan smiled and said, how good do you think our relationship is? Is this even possible to discuss? But for Dazzling's sake, I'll give you a piece of news for free. The Holy Moon clan has discovered this place hundreds of years ago. Zichen's expression changed. Are you sure? Of course. Yao Guan said. Not long after the immortal domain appeared, it was said that this place had been discovered, but at that time, all the force's attention was on the exposed immortal domain, so no one paid attention to the abnormality here. In addition, the Holy Moon clan deliberately kept it a secret, so no one knew. Since hundreds of years have passed, why take it out and explore it slowly? Zichen found it a little strange. As far as I know, it's really dangerous inside. The reason why the Holy Moon clan shared it with everyone is that they couldn't bear such a loss. Yao Guan said, recently, we've secretly investigated. In the past few hundred years, many experts of the Holy Moon clan have disappeared. Although they announced that they were in seclusion, there are too many of them. Zichen frowned. You mean, they have never given up on exploration in the past few hundred years, but suddenly announced that it was open to the outside world? Yao Guan nodded. Zichen said, could it be that he encountered a powerful threat? Yao Guan shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. The frowning Zichen suddenly said, do you think it's expensive to exchange one lost heavenly crystal for 10 immortal stones? Yao Guan didn't even think about it and said directly, of course it's expensive. How about we form an alliance? Cui Jing said directly, I only have so few people. There's no benefit in forming an alliance with me. Zichen said lightly, maybe after we go in. We'll need your people to protect us? You don't have to worry about that. When you need our help, we'll do our best. Cui Jing obviously came with sincerity. If you agree, we'll pay for your teleportation fees. Forget it. It's better if we go our separate ways. I have many enemies, and this time, the Holy Thunder Clan did not send anyone else. I don't know if I can protect myself after going in. Zichen suggested, if you really want to form an alliance, you can go to Leijing Hongtian. That idiot only wants to strengthen the Leijing family. I think he'll agree to form an alliance with you. Cui Jing looked at Zichen. You really won't consider it? Zichen said helplessly, I want to, but I can't. Cui Jing asked again, then when will you go in? The day after tomorrow. Zichen did not hide it. Then we'll meet again in the exiled grounds. Cui Jing left. Zichen did not agree to the alliance, so she did not wait any longer. Chapter 4082. In just 2 days, more than 90% of the forces had entered the severed world. Most of the remaining forces had not collected enough immortal stones, or were waiting for the arrival of powerful clansmen. There was almost no one who deliberately waited like Zichen. Lei Ming and the others had been waiting anxiously for a long time, but since Zichen did not say anything, the others did not dare to act on their own. 3 days later, Zichen finally left the room, and Lei Ming and the others had been waiting outside for a long time. Let's go, Zichen said faintly and walked forward. When they arrived, someone had already prepared a teleportation array, and there were more than 30 pieces of lost sky crystals. In fact, there was no need for so many, but for safety reasons, the more sky crystals there were, the more stable the teleportation would be. Compared to those desperados, the Saint Talisman Masters of the Holy Thunder Clan cherished their lives more. He didn't try to boost morale or say anything unnecessary. He didn't even say the word go as Zichen stood in the teleportation array. The others followed. Lei Ming explained, as long as we build a teleportation array, we don't need coordinates at all. These sky crystals can send us to the severed world. It seems that the sky crystals have the power to guide us. Did you find out how to get out? Zichen asked. I did, but there was no news. It seems that the Holy Moon Clan never mentions this matter. Lei Ming shook his head and said regretfully. The light on the lost sky crystals lit up, and the teleportation array was activated. A powerful suction force fell on the crowd. The power in the sky crystals was rapidly dissipating, and in the blink of an eye, they were all consumed and shattered. Zichen and the others disappeared. As if walking in the darkness, Zichen felt a strange fluctuation of power, which vaguely gave him a familiar feeling. The feeling disappeared in a flash. Light appeared in their field of vision, and they landed on the ground. It was a high platform made of blue stone, and it was abnormally strong. In the middle, there were some colorful stones that outlined a beautiful pattern. Welcome, everyone. A warm voice sounded, and Zichen turned his head and saw a divine spirit running toward them. There were other guards around. My name is Tsukabutsu. Welcome to the Lost World. I hope that everyone will have a great harvest here. Yu Bujing said again with a smile on his face. Zichen asked, will everyone who comes in appear here? That's not necessarily the case. It could appear in other places as well, Yu Bujing said. But there's no need to worry, because no matter where you appear, there will be someone in charge of receiving and guiding you. Zichen nodded and asked, which direction should we go? A small booklet appeared in Yu Bujing's hand. He smiled and said, I have a lost manual here. I wonder if you guys are interested? It can help everyone resolve the crisis to the greatest extent. It only costs 50 immortal stones. Before Zichen could speak, Lei Ming took out the immortal stones that he had prepared. The smile on Yu Bujing's face grew wider and more sincere. Take care, bosses. You have fewer people, so I suggest you go southeast. Lei Ming took the lost manual and handed it to Zichen. Zichen took the booklet and skimmed through it. The booklet wasn't thick, and there wasn't much recorded in it. If it was placed in the outside world, it wouldn't be worth a single cent, but in this place, it seemed to be worth a decent price. And Yu Bujing was able to get such a lucrative position. It seemed that his status in the Holy Moon Clan was not low, and he might even have gotten in through connections. There were some lost races recorded in it, and they looked like uncivilized alien races. Some had fangs, some had heads as big as cows, and some had 3 heads and 6 ears, and some had a human head and a beast body. There were a lot of records, but it was not comprehensive. Some were only marked with the word dangerous. On the last page, there was a drawing of a person, or rather, the other party looked like a normal human, if there were no wings behind him. The real lost race. Combat power unknown. Run away immediately when you see him. Zichun handed the booklet to Lei Ming. In a place like this, 50 immortal stones was considered to be worth it. Lei Ming finished reading the content recorded in it, and his face changed a few times. Sir, where are we going now? Zichun pointed to the southeast. Let's go there and have a look. After walking for more than 100 feet, they saw another person appear in front of them. The other party said with a smile, "Welcome to the lost world." Hearing this familiar voice, Lei Ming suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. I have notes about the resources here. I wonder if you're interested? 100 immortal stones. The other party took out the booklet directly. A faint smile appeared at the corner of Zichun's mouth. It was rumored that there were many holy fairies in the Holy Moon Clan, and the world's evaluation of the Holy Moon Clan was also very high. But she didn't expect that the men of the Holy Moon Clan were really good at doing business, boiling a frog in warm water and slowly killing it. Up until now, they had not seen or obtained anything, but they had already spent hundreds of immortal stones. Lei Ming took out immortal stones and could only exchange with the other party. Thank you. I hope everyone can have a great harvest. The businessman who did not even leave his name left just like that. Hey, we forgot to ask, how do we leave? Zichun suddenly shouted at the Holy Spirit. You just came and you want to leave? The Holy Spirit was somewhat puzzled. Zichun said, knowing the way out in advance, it's better to be prepared. You just came in, and there are still remnants of the aura of the lost heavenly crystal on you, so you can't leave for the time being. The fastest you can leave is 20 days later. The Holy Spirit smiled and said, the way to leave is relatively simple, and that is to continue to use the lost heavenly crystal to set up a teleportation array, but the way to operate it is reversed. Zichun's expression did not change in the slightest. Then after leaving, we have to stay for more than 20 days to come in again? That's right. So if there's nothing else, don't go out. The Holy Spirit nodded. Where can I buy the lost heavenly crystal? Zichun asked again. The corners of the sacred spirit's mouth curled up into a mysterious smile. He stretched out 2 fingers and said, there are 2 ways. The first is to obtain the lost heavenly crystal by chance. The second is to return to the encampment and purchase it there. With that, the Holy Spirit took his leave. And Zichun was completely sure what the people of the Holy Moon Clan had done in the past hundreds of years. They had built a complete set of entry and exit routes, just like the bamboo sea world of the Fong family in that world. The passageways to enter were all designed long ago. Sir, look, there are indeed a lot of resources inside.